Most people spend their whole lives using only a fraction of their mind, not because they lack intelligence, but because they never learn how to think beyond the obvious. Genius isn't about being born special. It's about training the brain to see what others ignore, to question what others accept, to think deeper than everyone around you. Your potential isn't missing. It's dormant, waiting for you to wake it up. Your mind becomes what you consistently feed it. If you fill it with distractions, it gets weaker. If you challenge it with ideas, problems, patterns, and possibilities, it evolves. Genius doesn't come from wishing to be smart. It comes from disciplining your brain into clarity, focus, and strategic thinking. Intelligence grows the same way muscles do, through resistance, repetition, and pressure. This audiobook will teach you how to force your brain to think at a higher level, not by memorizing facts, but by strengthening perception, sharpening awareness, and developing mental mastery. Genius thinking is not loud or complicated. It's precise, calm, and intentional. It's the ability to hold ideas, break them apart, and rebuild them into solutions that others can't see. You are not here to think like everyone else. You're here to evolve beyond the average, beyond laziness, beyond autopilot thinking. Because once you learn to control your thoughts, you'll stop consuming information and start creating insight. That is the moment you unlock your inner potential. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Genius is a habit, not a gift. Genius is not a spark that appears randomly. It is a pattern deliberately repeated until the mind becomes extraordinary. People wait for a moment of brilliance without realizing that intelligence grows from routines, not inspiration. The brain changes only when it faces consistent challenges. Just like muscles strengthen under resistance, the mind expands under pressure. Every time you force yourself to think harder, question deeper, or sit longer with a difficult idea, you are training your brain. Genius emerges not from talent alone, but from mental discipline practiced daily. Most people believe intelligence is something you either have or you don't, so they never try to develop it. This belief protects them from responsibility. If genius is a gift, then they have an excuse not to pursue it. But the truth is uncomfortable. You could be much smarter than you are right now. You simply haven't trained yourself. Genius doesn't feel magical in the beginning. It feels slow, repetitive, even frustrating. The ones who look brilliant later are the ones who endured the early stages when nobody else had the patience to. Your brain becomes what you repeatedly ask it to do. If you always seek entertainment, it becomes addicted to noise. If you constantly look for shortcuts, it becomes lazy. If you expose it to shallow thinking, it stops digging for depth. Genius thinkers aren't necessarily born with better minds. They simply demand more from their minds. They practice thinking the way athletes practice movement, consistently, intentionally, and with rising difficulty over time. Brilliance begins with boredom, with the ability to remain focused when your mind wants distraction. Genius thinkers don't escape the discomfort of thinking deeply. They stay in it. They wrestle with problems. They sit through confusion. They resist the urge to run away from uncertainty. This patience trains the brain to form complex ideas, develop creative solutions, and connect concepts others overlook. Every breakthrough begins with the refusal to quit thinking too early. A genius is not someone who always knows the answer. It is someone who knows how to think through the unknown. Knowledge can be memorized, but insight must be earned through effort. That effort comes from repeatedly choosing focus over distraction, curiosity over ignorance, and clarity over confusion. Your brain is sculpted by your choices. Genius thinking happens when you choose growth over comfort again and again, until it becomes your natural mode. Habits are the architecture of intelligence. Small daily decisions build an inner structure that produces brilliant ideas. What you read, what you question, how long you reflect, how quickly you move on from distractions, all of it shapes your brain. Genius doesn't arrive in one big leap. It accumulates in microscopic improvements. Over time, the mind becomes sharper, more perceptive, and more capable of generating insight because it has been trained to operate at a higher level. The difference between average and genius thinking is attention. The average mind jumps from idea to idea, starving itself of depth. The genius mind digs into ideas, turning them over, breaking them apart, analyzing every detail. Attention is like sunlight. When scattered, it warms nothing. When focused, it becomes powerful enough to burn through obstacles. Genius is the ability to hold focus long enough to produce something meaningful. Genius thinking thrives on consistency, not dramatic bursts of inspiration, not occasional effort. Real genius looks boring on the outside, reading deeply, practicing logic, observing patterns, refining thoughts, questioning assumptions. But inside that repetition, the brain rewires itself. Ideas begin to link faster. Memory becomes richer. Creativity expands. Genius grows slowly, then suddenly becomes visible to everyone else. Brilliance requires effort without applause. Genius thinkers work when no one is watching, reading ideas no one else is interested in, exploring concepts no one else understands yet. They don't need validation to stay curious. They don't wait for praise to keep digging deeper. They know that the brain they build today will reward them later with insights that feel impossible to others. Genius is lonely at first, then respected later. Mental strength is more important than mental speed. People admire fast thinkers, but true genius comes from thinking thoroughly, not quickly. Fast thinking solves immediate problems. Deep thinking creates new possibilities. A genius mind is slow enough to notice what others skip, patient enough to question what others accept, and disciplined enough to finish thoughts that others abandon halfway. Intelligence is not speed, it is depth. Genius is formed when thinking becomes a lifestyle instead of a requirement. A genius doesn't think only when problems arise. They think to understand the world more deeply. They analyze, observe, theorize, compare, and connect ideas out of habit. Their mind becomes a workshop, not a storage room. They don't collect facts, they construct meaning. And this construction, repeated daily, shapes a mind capable of extraordinary perception. You don't become a genius by wishing for intelligence. You become one by training your curiosity. Curiosity is the fuel of mastery. It pushes you to explore beyond what is taught, to question what others accept, to search for what hasn't been explained. The curious mind keeps the brain active, adaptable, and growing. Without curiosity, intelligence becomes stagnant. With curiosity, even an ordinary mind becomes exceptional. Genius requires resistance, the willingness to challenge your own thinking. It's easy to listen to information that confirms your beliefs. It's harder to pursue ideas that threaten them. Genius pushes itself out of comfort zones, knowing that growth happens where the mind is forced to stretch. Your brain becomes stronger every time you confront a thought that contradicts your assumptions instead of running back to what feels safe. Great thinking is built on self-discipline. You cannot think like a genius if you live like a distracted consumer. Your habits either sharpen your mind or dull it. Every time you scroll aimlessly, you weaken your thought muscles. Every time you sit with a hard idea, you strengthen them. A genius does not avoid difficult thinking. They pursue it because they know difficult thinking transforms their mind. If you want to think at a higher level, you must stop treating your brain like a place for entertainment and start treating it like a tool for creation. Genius thinking is not passive consumption. It is active engagement. It requires wrestling with ideas, forming original concepts, asking deeper questions, and building mental frameworks. When you use your brain to create rather than distract, it becomes more creative by design. A genius is not someone who knows everything. It is someone who learns strategically. They don't chase information randomly. They study with purpose. They seek depth over quantity. They spend time understanding a few things deeply instead of trying to memorize many things superficially. The more deeply the brain understands, the better it can innovate. Genius prioritizes mastery over accumulation. Your brain evolves through consistency, not talent. If you feed it complexity regularly, it becomes comfortable with complexity. If you expose it to challenging information, it becomes skilled at processing challenge. Genius is not the result of gifted thinking, it is the result of persistent thinking. Talent is potential, habit is transformation. Genius is what happens when potential meets discipline. Genius is quiet. It does its work in solitude, refining ideas, studying patterns, exploring contradictions. It doesn't need recognition to stay committed. It doesn't need applause to keep thinking. Genius doesn't chase attention, it chases truth. It doesn't perform intelligence, it develops it. And that development happens internally long before the world ever sees the result. You become a genius by how you use your time, not by how smart you seem, not by how much you know, not by how quickly you learn. The hours you spend shaping your mind define your intelligence more than anything else. Those who devote time to training their brain will inevitably surpass those who rely only on their natural ability. Genius is earned through effort, not gifted through birth. In the end, genius is nothing more than a habit of thinking deeply when others settle for surface, a habit of questioning when others accept blindly, a habit of training the mind when others distract themselves. Genius is built through repetition, discipline, curiosity, and patience. It becomes visible only after years of invisible effort, and anyone who is willing to put in that effort has the potential to think like a genius. Chapter 2. Train your brain to think beyond the obvious. Thinking beyond the obvious begins with refusing to accept the first answer your mind offers. The brain loves shortcuts. It chooses simple explanations because they require the least energy. But genius thinkers don't settle for simplicity without examination. They hold ideas in their mind longer. They ask, what else could this mean? They challenge the immediate conclusion. This extra step, this mental pause, is where deeper thinking begins. To think beyond the obvious, you must train your brain to look for layers. Most people see only the surface of situations, reacting to what's most visible. But truth is rarely on the surface. It hides in patterns, motives, causes, and connections that are not immediately apparent. Genius thinkers ask why repeatedly, peeling back each layer until the deeper structure is revealed. Insight emerges through curiosity, not assumption. The obvious answer keeps your thinking shallow. But when you explore alternative possibilities, your mind becomes more flexible. You begin to notice how one question can have multiple interpretations, how one action can come from many motives, how one problem can be solved in different ways. This mental flexibility is a core skill of genius, not because it makes life complicated, but because it makes thinking complete. Your brain must learn to sit with uncertainty without rushing to conclusions. Most people feel uncomfortable when they don't immediately understand something, so they decide quickly just to escape confusion. But genius thinkers tolerate confusion. They allow their mind to stay in the unknown long enough to observe, analyze, and explore. Confusion is not weakness. It is the doorway to deeper understanding. Thinking beyond the obvious requires breaking mental autopilot. The brain repeats patterns because repetition saves time and energy. But autopilot thinking leads to predictable results. To escape it, you must consciously interrupt familiar thought loops. Ask yourself, is there another angle? What am I not considering? What if the opposite is true? These cognitive shifts force your brain to break out of its usual patterns. A genius trains their brain to see hidden causes instead of reacting to visible symptoms. Most people notice what happens but ignore why it happens. They focus on events rather than systems. Genius thinkers trace every outcome back to its root. Habits, incentives, history, beliefs, patterns, environments. Once you understand the root, solutions become clearer and more effective. Thinking deeply means solving problems from the inside out. To think beyond the obvious, you must practice intellectual humility. You must accept that your first impression might be incomplete or even wrong. The ego hates this. It wants to be right instantly. But genius thinking doesn't protect the ego. It protects truth. When you surrender your need to be right, you free your brain to explore objectively. Humility opens more mental doors than confidence does. Your brain needs challenge the same way your body needs exercise. When you expose it to new ideas, complex problems, and difficult questions, it becomes stronger. But when you feed it entertainment, gossip, and easy answers, it becomes weak. Genius is created by placing your brain in situations that require it to stretch. Every time you force your mind to struggle with new information, you upgrade your intelligence. Learning to think beyond the obvious requires slowing down your thoughts. Overthinking is not deep thinking. It is loud thinking. Deep thinking is quiet, steady, and intentional. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It doesn't spiral. It observes. It follows ideas to their end with patience. The slower the thinking process, the more precise and insightful it becomes. Precision requires time. The mind becomes sharper when it learns to compare differences. Most people accept information in isolation, one idea at a time, without contrast. Genius thinkers compare ideas side by side, noticing how one concept changes when viewed through another. They examine contradictions, exceptions, and alternatives. This comparative thinking creates clarity, because truth is easier to see when placed next to its opposites. Thinking beyond the obvious requires holding two opposing ideas without immediately rejecting one. Most people seek certainty, so they choose sides quickly. But genius thinkers can sit with paradox. They understand that two conflicting truths can coexist. They analyze both perspectives deeply before aligning with one. This ability to hold contrast expands the mind beyond simplistic answers. Your brain expands when you ask sharper questions. Average thinkers ask, "What happened?" Genius thinkers ask, "What caused it? What does it mean? What does it reveal? What could it become?" The quality of your questions determines the quality of your thinking. Genius is not about knowing everything. It's about asking questions that lead to deeper truths. Thinking beyond the obvious demands intentional mental discomfort. You must learn to enjoy the difficulty of thinking, to treat effort as growth, not as a burden. When your brain feels resistance, it is building new connections. When thinking feels hard, it's a sign that you are stretching into new levels of intelligence. Genius thinking feels uncomfortable before it feels rewarding. Your brain sees more when it stops rushing to judgment. Instant opinions limit insight. Genius thinkers delay judgment until they gather enough data to see accurately. Instead of reacting, they observe. Instead of concluding, they examine. Instead of defending a point, they study it. The longer you stay neutral, the deeper your understanding becomes. To think beyond the obvious, you must expose your brain to diverse sources of knowledge. Read outside your usual interests. Listen to opposing views. Study areas unrelated to your expertise. Genius thinkers cross-pollinate ideas from different fields. Science influencing art, psychology influencing business, philosophy influencing innovation. Creative solutions emerge when information from different worlds merges into one insight. The mind expands when you learn to think in causes, not categories. Instead of labeling people as good or bad, you ask what shaped them. Instead of calling decisions right or wrong, you analyze what influenced them. Genius thinkers replace labels with understanding. They trade judgment for curiosity, and curiosity leads to deeper truth. Your brain must be trained to question general beliefs, especially those that seem universally accepted. Genius thinkers challenge cultural assumptions, common knowledge, and popular logic. They don't rebel for the sake of rebellion. They simply refuse to think on autopilot. They ask whether the majority might be wrong. Often, the genius sees truth long before others recognize it. To think beyond the obvious, you must practice mental endurance. Deep thinking takes time. Genius thinkers don't abandon problems because they are difficult. They keep returning to them. They revisit ideas repeatedly, each time discovering new layers. Repetition builds clarity. Insight is refined through persistence. In the end, thinking beyond the obvious is a skill anyone can build. It is trained through patience, curiosity, humility, and repeated mental challenge. Genius is not about immediately finding answers. It's about refusing to stop questioning. It's the courage to think longer and deeper than others. That persistence transforms ordinary thoughts into extraordinary insight. Genius is not born. It is built by consistently forcing the brain to go further than convenience allows. Every time you think beyond the surface, break an assumption, or follow a question to its end, you strengthen the habits of brilliance. Over time, your mind evolves into something rare, not because you were gifted, but because you trained yourself to see what others ignore. Chapter 3. The Discipline of Deep Focus. Deep focus is not something your brain naturally gives you. It is something you earn through discipline. The mind is wired to escape difficulty and seek stimulation. It prefers quick rewards, easy entertainment, and shallow thinking because they require less energy. That means focus is not about desire, it's about training your brain to resist its instinct to flee pressure. Only those who persist long enough to stay with a task reach the depth where true intelligence begins. Most people never discover deep focus because they quit thinking the moment it becomes uncomfortable. They mistake boredom for exhaustion and confusion for failure. But boredom is the doorway to concentration, and confusion is the first stage of clarity. The mind sharpens only when it is forced to push through the initial discomfort. Those who abandon effort too soon remain stuck in shallow thinking, never reaching the level where insight grows. Deep focus demands patience with the invisible progress happening beneath the surface. Your brain rewires itself when you sit with a problem long enough. You may not notice change immediately, but your neural pathways are strengthening, your memory is adapting, and your cognitive endurance is building. Genius thinkers are not gifted with stronger minds. They simply spend more time inside the difficulty until the difficulty becomes easy. The discipline of focus is built through your daily environment. You cannot expect deep thinking in a chaotic space, surrounded by noise, distractions, and constant interruptions. Genius thinkers protect their mental space like a warrior protects his armor. They create environments that support focus, structured, quiet, intentional. They don't wait for clarity to show up. They build a space where clarity has room to grow. To master deep focus, you must learn to delay gratification. The brain wants immediate reward, a notification, a message, a distraction, a quick hit of pleasure. Distractions feel good instantly. Focus feels uncomfortable at first. Genius thinkers resist the urge for instant pleasure because they understand that delayed gratification produces long-term brilliance. Focus is a battle between your future self and your present impulses. Deep focus strengthens when you learn to work in rhythms instead of forcing endless productivity. The brain cannot maintain peak concentration for hours without rest. True mastery comes from working in cycles, intense attention followed by intentional breaks. These breaks are not escapes. They are recovery phases that allow your brain to return stronger, clearer, and less fatigued. Focus becomes sustainable when it follows rhythm. The disciplined mind learns to ignore unimportant information. Not everything deserves your attention. Most thoughts, notifications, opinions, obligations, and distractions are mental noise designed to pull you off course. Deep focus requires saying no repeatedly, not just to others, but to yourself. Genius grows when your mind becomes selective about what it allows in. Distraction is not a lack of focus, it is a lack of commitment. When you truly commit to a task, your brain knows there is no escape. That commitment forces the mind to adapt, concentrate, and solve problems without looking for shortcuts. Deep focus becomes easier when the brain understands that quitting is not an option. Genius emerges when the mind is locked into a mission. To build deep focus, you must learn to think slowly. Most people rush through tasks to avoid discomfort. But deep thinkers slow down, analyze carefully, observe details, and reflect on meaning. They don't race to finish. They seek understanding. Speed creates surface-level results. Patience creates depth. The disciplined mind is not fast. It is precise. Deep focus requires the ability to sit still long enough to access the deeper layers of thought. Movement is often a distraction we use to escape difficult thinking. Genius thinkers stay still, letting their discomfort fade. Once the noise of restlessness quiets, clarity rises. Stillness is not laziness. It is the prerequisite for deep insight. The brain becomes disciplined when you control your attention instead of letting attention control you. Modern life trains you to react every second to interruptions, updates, messages, and impulses. But deep focus is the opposite of reaction. It is the active choice to remain absorbed in one task despite the pull of everything else. Genius requires mastery of attention more than mastery of knowledge. To focus deeply, you must lower the volume of your emotions. Anxiety, excitement, irritation, and stress scatter your concentration. Deep thinkers regulate their emotional state before working. They don't chase intensity, they cultivate calmness. Focus thrives in a mind that is steady. Emotional control is not suppression. It is directing your emotions so they serve your concentration rather than sabotage it. Deep focus grows when you learn to enjoy the silence. Silence is where your thoughts become audible, where your creativity awakens, and where solutions reveal themselves. If you cannot sit with silence, you cannot sit with your own mind. Genius thinkers make silence a habit, not because they fear noise, but because silence deepens their relationship with ideas. The brain must learn that resistance is part of thinking, not a reason to stop. When you hit a difficult moment in concentration, your mind will try to escape. It will tempt you with distractions disguised as urgency. Discipline means recognizing these mental tricks and staying firm. The breakthrough happens just beyond the moment of highest resistance. Deep focus requires clarity of purpose. You cannot concentrate deeply without knowing why the task matters. When your work aligns with meaning, your brain finds the motivation to endure difficulty. Genius is not driven by random interest. It is fueled by mission. Focus becomes easier when your mind understands the significance of what you're doing. To discipline your brain, you must separate effort from outcome. If you focus only to finish something, your attention becomes rushed. Deep focus comes from immersing yourself in the process, not the result. You think better when you are present with the task instead of fantasizing about achievements. The disciplined mind loves the work itself, not just the accomplishment. Focus deepens when you eliminate multitasking. Multitasking divides attention into fragments, weakening memory, slowing problem-solving, and destroying clarity. Genius thinkers don't scatter themselves. They face one task fully, then move on. Concentration becomes powerful when it is unified. Depth is only possible when your attention is whole, not divided. The mind must learn endurance the way a runner builds stamina. You cannot expect to focus deeply for long if you only practice shallow attention. Start small, then expand. Train your brain gradually. Longer reading sessions, extended problem-solving, more space for thinking. Over time, your concentration grows stronger, capable of sustaining insight that once overwhelmed you. Deep focus transforms confusion into creativity. When your mind stays on a problem long enough, it begins to see relationships, patterns, and solutions that were invisible before. Insight is not sudden, it is earned through persistence. Those who break through confusion find genius on the other side. Deep thinking turns obstacles into innovations. Distraction becomes weaker when you stop entertaining it. Instead of negotiating with impulses, ignore them completely. Close the door, silence notifications, remove visual clutter, and set boundaries. The disciplined mind doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It creates the conditions for focus. Your environment must support your ambition. Deep focus demands discipline in how you start. The first 5 minutes determine whether your mind commits or escapes. Begin with intention, not by checking messages, not by wandering aimlessly, not by warming into distraction. Start directly with your main task. Momentum builds from a powerful beginning. Genius starts before the mind has time to resist. Your brain becomes capable of deep focus when you treat thinking as work, not as something that just happens. Thinking is not a passive event. It is labor, it is exertion, it requires energy. Genius thinkers respect that energy and use it wisely. They don't waste their mental strength on trivial distractions. They invest it into meaningful work. Deep focus is a form of discipline that rewires your identity. When you train yourself to concentrate, you become someone who doesn't run from difficulty. You become someone who finishes what others abandon. You become someone whose mind sharpens through effort. Genius is not a talent. It is the personality of someone who stays with a thought long enough to transform it. To master deep focus, you must break your addiction to constant stimulation. Modern technology trains your brain to expect novelty every few seconds. This destroys your ability to think deeply. To rebuild focus, you must detox your attention, reducing your dependence on noise. Genius cannot grow in a mind that is constantly entertained. Deep focus turns time into an ally instead of an enemy. When you are absorbed in a task, time doesn't feel rushed or wasted. Hours become moments. Work becomes meditation. The mind loses track of pressure and becomes present with purpose. This state, called flow, is where genius thrives. You reach it only through discipline, not luck. The disciplined mind is not distracted by urgency. Many distractions disguise themselves as important tasks, notifications, or feelings of needing to respond immediately. Genius thinkers prioritize depth over reaction. They know that constant urgency keeps the brain shallow. They guard their focus fiercely, refusing to trade it for constant reactivity. Deep focus strengthens when you accept that mental fatigue is part of the process. The brain gets tired the same way muscles do, and that fatigue is growth. Instead of quitting when your mind feels heavy, allow yourself to work through the discomfort gradually. Fatigue is not failure, it is adaptation. Your intelligence expands through strain. The greatest enemy of deep focus is impulse. Every time you switch tasks without finishing, you train your brain to flee pressure. Every time you interrupt your work for trivial curiosity, you weaken your mental muscles. The disciplined mind resists impulses not because it lacks them, but because it refuses to obey them. Genius requires impulse control. Deep focus is built on the belief that ideas deserve your full attention. When you value your thoughts, you treat them with respect. You don't rush them, you don't scatter them, you don't abandon them prematurely. You sit with them until they evolve. The more you honor your thoughts, the more powerful they become. The disciplined mind learns to listen to silence long enough for insight to speak. Most people never wait long enough for real understanding to emerge. They think shallowly because they leave before depth arrives. Genius thinkers remain until clarity unfolds naturally. Insight is not forced, it is discovered. Deep focus teaches your brain that it is capable of more than it believes. Most people underestimate their mental potential because they never push their mind to its limits. But when you stretch your attention, you discover that your brain has a far greater capacity than you imagined. You were not born limited. You simply haven't trained yourself deeply enough. You cannot think like a genius if your environment constantly pulls you away from thought. You must create a boundary around your mind. choosing when and how the world has access to you. This boundary is not selfish, it is necessary. Your genius is your responsibility. No one else will protect it for you. Deep focus teaches you that consistency beats intensity. You don't need rare moments of extreme concentration. You need regular daily exposure to focused effort. Even 30 minutes of real attention each day outperforms hours of distracted work. Discipline is not about working hard occasionally. It is about working deeply consistently. To master deep focus, you must stop expecting motivation to carry you. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Genius does not rely on feeling inspired. It relies on building systems that make focus inevitable. When the structure supports the mind follows. Genius is built on habits that make brilliance automatic. Deep focus changes the way you experience learning. Instead of trying to get through information quickly, you begin to savor it. You seek depth over completion. You care more about understanding than finishing. This shift transforms learning into growth. The mind becomes a tool for mastery rather than a machine for memorization. The discipline of focus eventually becomes a lifestyle. You start thinking more deliberately, listening more attentively, working more efficiently, and observing more deeply. The way you speak, solve problems, and make decisions changes. Your thoughts slow down and deepen. You transition from reacting to reasoning, from consuming to creating. This is the transformation of the mind. In the end, deep focus is what separates genius from mediocrity. Not talent, not luck, not background, focus. Those who train their brain to think without escape build intelligence that others mistake for natural brilliance. Deep focus is not a trick, it is a discipline, a choice you make every day to sit with thought, resist distractions, and commit to clarity. Genius is simply the result of staying long enough to think like one. Chapter 4. How to break mental laziness and distraction. Mental laziness is not a sign of stupidity, it is a habit created by comfort. The brain naturally chooses the easiest path because it wants to conserve energy. Distraction becomes appealing not because the world is interesting, but because thinking deeply requires effort. To break mental laziness, you must train your mind to endure effort the same way you train muscles to lift heavier weights. Intelligence grows when thinking becomes something you push through, not something you avoid. The first step to defeating mental laziness is acknowledging that your brain prefers shortcuts. It doesn't want to analyze, reflect, or understand deeply. It wants instant answers and immediate relief. When you recognize this instinct, you stop treating distraction as a mystery problem and start treating it as a predictable impulse. Awareness is power. Once you understand how your mind tries to escape effort, you can stop letting it run your life. To break laziness, you must stop negotiating with distractions. Many people think they are fighting distraction, but in reality, they argue with it. They justify checking their phone. They promise they'll get back to work in a minute. They flirt with escape instead of killing it. Genius thinkers do not debate impulses. They eliminate them without discussion. You cannot win against distraction by entertaining it. You win by denying it access. Mental laziness thrives on stimulation. The more your brain gets used to constant noise, scrolling, messaging, switching apps, switching tasks, the more it loses the ability to focus. The mind becomes restless, impatient, and easily bored. To break this pattern, you must reintroduce silence into your life. Silence forces the brain to think, observe, and process deeply. It starves laziness of its favorite fuel, endless entertainment. One of the strongest ways to break distraction is to build friction around your impulses. If your phone is always visible, you will grab it unconsciously. If notifications are on, your brain will expect interruption. Move the phone out of reach, turn off notifications, and create physical barriers between you and distraction. What is harder to access is easier to resist. Discipline becomes easier when temptation isn't constantly touching you. Mental laziness often comes from unclear goals. When the mind doesn't know exactly what to focus on, it chooses the simplest form of escape. Vagueness breeds distraction. You must train your mind with specific targets. I will study this one topic. I will solve this one problem. I will read this one chapter. Specificity creates intent, and intent destroys laziness. When the brain knows exactly what to do, it stops wandering into avoidance. Another cause of distraction is emotional disturbance. Stress, insecurity, boredom, and fear make the brain crave escape. Instead of fighting distraction directly, address the emotion behind it. If you feel overwhelmed, break tasks into smaller steps. If you feel bored, increase challenge. If you feel anxious, breathe and calm your body. Genius thinkers manage their emotional state before trying to focus. A calm mind is a focused mind. Mental laziness disguises itself as resting, but real rest rejuvenates you. Laziness leaves you numb and drained. Rest comes from intentional pauses. Laziness comes from compulsive avoidance. If you feel worse after your break, it wasn't rest, it was distraction. To break the cycle, choose restorative breaks. Stretch, breathe, walk, reflect. Train your brain to rest with intention, not escape through empty stimulation. To defeat laziness, you must embrace the discomfort of starting. The hardest part of thinking is the beginning. The brain resists the moment you begin a task, but once momentum builds, resistance fades. Do not wait to feel ready. Genius thinkers start before their brain wants to. They break laziness by acting quickly without giving the mind time to negotiate. The faster you begin, the faster the brain adapts. Breaking laziness requires developing respect for work. You cannot treat thinking like a burden and expect to become intelligent. You must value the process of effort. You must see thinking as training, not torture. Genius thinkers view challenges as opportunities to grow, not obstacles to avoid. When you start respecting effort, work becomes rewarding instead of exhausting. Respect makes discipline easier. Distraction weakens when you stop trying to multitask. Multitasking trains your brain to expect constant stimulus. It destroys your capacity for deep work. To break laziness, force your brain to do one thing at a time. When you focus on a task fully, your attention becomes sharper. As your attention sharpens, distraction loses power. The more you unitask, the more intelligent your thinking becomes. Mental laziness is fueled by low-quality habits. If your day begins with scrolling, gossip, passive consumption, and easy entertainment, your brain becomes wired for laziness before you even attempt to think. Break the habit by starting your day with something stimulating: reading, problem-solving, journaling, planning. When the brain begins the day with activity instead of consumption, it becomes less willing to remain passive. To train your brain against laziness, you must think longer than you feel comfortable. Your intelligence expands only after your mind wants to quit. Just like the body grows after the last repetition, the mind grows after the last moment of resistance. Stay with the thought longer. Stay with the problem longer. Genius is not the ability to understand quickly. It is the willingness to keep thinking when everyone else stops. Mental laziness feeds on perfectionism. When you think you need everything to be ideal before you begin, you waste time waiting for motivation, clarity, or inspiration. The disciplined mind doesn't wait. It works with imperfection. Genius thinkers don't need perfect moments or perfect conditions. They respect progress more than perfection. Movement breaks laziness. Perfectionism traps you in thinking about work instead of doing it. Distraction loses power when you remove the emotional reward connected to it. Social media, games, and constant checking feel rewarding because your brain associates them with dopamine. You must retrain your brain to get reward from thinking, learning, and solving. Track your progress, celebrate breakthroughs, reflect on insights. Give your brain pleasure from growth, not escape. Rewire reward, and you rewire attention. To break laziness, you must build a strong identity around discipline. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with distraction, you reinforce the habit. Change your identity first. Tell yourself, I am someone who focuses. I am someone who finishes. I am someone who thinks deeply. Identity shapes behavior more than motivation. Genius thinking grows when your self-image aligns with discipline. Mental laziness is strengthened by hidden fear, fear of failure, fear of effort, fear of not understanding, fear of looking stupid. Instead of admitting those fears, the mind chooses distraction. To break the habit, stop trying to escape the fear. Face it. Allow yourself to not understand at first. Allow yourself to struggle. Genius thinkers embrace confusion as a sign they are about to grow. Fear loses power when you accept it. Laziness shrinks in the presence of challenge. Most people become mentally weak because they avoid difficult ideas. Challenge is a cognitive workout. You grow by reading harder books, solving harder problems, engaging with complex concepts, thinking beyond comfort. Difficulty sharpens intelligence. If you always choose easy tasks, you train your brain to stay small. Growth requires challenge. To break distraction, build rituals. Genius thinkers don't rely on motivation, they rely on systems. A ritual trains the brain to enter focus automatically, sit in the same place, at the same time, with the same tools, in the same environment. Over time, your brain associates that setting with concentration. Ritual becomes a trigger. Focus becomes a reflex, not a struggle. Mental laziness thrives when the mind lacks purpose. If you don't know why you're thinking, your brain will search for reasons to escape. Purpose gives thinking direction. Define why you need to grow. Define why focus matters. Genius thinkers are not driven by random curiosity alone. They are driven by mission. When the brain serves a purpose, distraction becomes less interesting than progress. Breaking laziness requires tolerating the frustration of not knowing. When you encounter difficulty, your mind will want to run. Instead of running, sit with the uncertainty. Explore it. Thinking is a process of discovery, not instant clarity. Confusion is the mind reorganizing itself for deeper understanding. Genius is born in the space between I don't know and I will find out. Distraction weakens when you build endurance for boredom. Boredom is not a sign that the mind needs entertainment. It is a sign that the mind is unused to deep engagement. Train yourself to stay present through boredom. Break the reflex to escape. Your mind is not bored. It is untrained. Teach it to work past the desire to drift. Boredom is a doorway, not a wall. Mental laziness fades when you reward progress, not completion. Celebrate every moment you resisted distraction. Acknowledge every minute you fought for focus. These small victories signal to your brain that effort matters. Progress becomes emotionally satisfying. Genius grows through reinforcement. The more you emotionally reward discipline, the more your brain desires it. To defeat distraction, control your environment before you control your mind. Clean your space, clear your desk, remove temptations, reduce clutter, and create a setting where your brain expects to think. The brain follows context. If your environment supports laziness, your thoughts will too. If your environment supports effort, your brain rises to the occasion. Laziness is strengthened by people who encourage distraction. If you surround yourself with shallow thinkers, constant complainers, or unfocused individuals, your brain will normalize laziness. Genius thinkers choose company carefully. They seek people who value knowledge, growth, curiosity, and intellectual effort. Intelligence spreads through association. Surround yourself with discipline, and laziness becomes uncomfortable. Distraction weakens when you develop the habit of finishing. Every unfinished task leaves a mental residue, pulling your attention backward. Finishing builds closure. Closure builds focus. Focus builds discipline. Train yourself to complete tasks, even small ones. Closing tasks strengthens your identity as someone who follows through. Genius is not just about thinking, it is about finishing thoughts. To break mental laziness, shift your attention from feelings to commitments. Feelings are unreliable. They fluctuate daily. You cannot wait to feel like thinking. You must honor what you committed to do. Genius thinkers don't ask, "Do I feel like working?" They ask, "What did I decide to do?" Commitment overrides mood. Mood will always try to escape effort. Commitment forces the brain to act. Mental laziness collapses when you build tolerance for repetition. Repeated effort strengthens neural pathways, deepens knowledge, and perfects skill. Repetition is how genius is formed. The average mind wants novelty. The disciplined mind embraces repetition. Practice until thinking becomes fluid, until knowledge becomes instinct, until the brain produces insight naturally. This is how intelligence compounds over time. To break distraction, practice observing your own thoughts. Watch how quickly your mind looks for escape. Notice the excuses it invents. Witness your impulses without obeying them. This awareness creates distance between you and your thoughts. When you are no longer controlled by your impulses, distraction becomes an option instead of a command. Freedom begins with observation. Mental laziness dies when thinking becomes rewarding. You must learn to enjoy effort. Reach a point where solving a problem feels exciting, where understanding something deeply feels nourishing, where focus feels energizing. When the brain experiences pleasure in thinking, it stops craving escape. Genius grows when effort becomes satisfying. To destroy distraction, stop expecting focus to feel comfortable. Focus is effort. It stretches you. It challenges your patience. It forces your mind into unfamiliar territory. Comfort is the enemy of growth. If you want intelligence, you must accept discomfort. Genius thinkers don't chase comfort. They chase expansion. The brain expands in discomfort, not ease. Laziness shrinks when you create consequences for distraction. If you waste time, don't reward yourself with entertainment. If you break focus, restart the work. Make distraction inconvenient. Make discipline valuable. Genius is not only built from reward, it is shaped through accountability. Hold yourself accountable for the mind you are building. Breaking mental laziness requires empowering your future self. You must define who you are becoming. Think like someone who will need focus. Act like someone who will need strength. Build habits for the person you want to be. Genius requires preparing your mind for the life you intend to live, not the comfort you want to feel today. To defeat distraction, use small, intentional steps. Don't expect to go from shallow thinking to deep focus overnight. Begin with minutes, not hours. Master short bursts of effort, then expand gradually. Incremental discipline becomes unstoppable discipline. Little focus becomes big focus when repeated. Genius is built brick by brick, not all at once. Mental laziness fades when you take ownership of your time. You stop pretending that you didn't have time and admit that you didn't protect it. Time is not found. It is controlled, guarded, and directed. You must choose where your hours go. Genius thinkers allocate time consciously. They do not wait for time. They carve it out. To break distraction, train your brain to return to focus after interruption. The skill is not in never getting distracted. It is in returning faster. Each time you pull your mind back, you strengthen your attention muscle. The comeback is the training. You become disciplined not by being perfect, but by recovering quickly. Finally, mental laziness ends when you treat your mind like something worth mastering. Genius is not reserved for the chosen few. It is reserved for those who train. If you feed your brain challenge, it will become intelligent. If you feed it distraction, it will become weak. The choice is not in your genetics, it is in your habits. Your mind becomes what you repeatedly do. Train it, and it will become extraordinary. Chapter 5. Learn to question everything you believe. The greatest barrier to intelligence is not ignorance, but certainty. Once you assume you already know, your mind stops investigating. Certainty freezes curiosity, and curiosity is the engine of genius. Some people protect their beliefs more fiercely than they protect their potential. They defend opinions they never questioned, and they ignore truths they never explored. If you want to think like a genius, you must be willing to challenge even your most familiar ideas. Your beliefs are not facts. They are conclusions your mind accepted at a certain time based on limited understanding. Yet people cling to beliefs as if they are permanent truths, refusing to re-examine them as they grow. Genius requires seeing beliefs as temporary tools, not lifelong identities. A smart mind updates itself. A stubborn mind stays outdated. Intelligence is not in what you know, but in your ability to revise what you know. To question a belief, you must separate yourself from it. Most people confuse their identity with their ideas. When a belief is challenged, they feel personally attacked, so they defend the idea even if it's wrong. Genius thinkers do the opposite. They detach their ego from their thinking. They can examine their beliefs without panic because they don't see change as weakness. They see it as refinement. Growth requires flexibility, not stubbornness. The strongest beliefs are often built on emotional experiences, not logic. A painful memory, a trusted mentor, a cultural influence, or a childhood lesson can shape your thinking without your permission. You internalize certain ideas not because they are true, but because they were repeated during your most vulnerable years. Genius begins when you ask, where did this belief come from, and does it still serve me today? Many people hold beliefs they never chose. They inherited them from society, family, religion, education, trends, or peers. They follow these ideas automatically, assuming they must be correct because they came from authority. Genius thinkers respect knowledge, but they don't worship it blindly. They understand that authority can be flawed, history can be biased, culture can be limiting, and the majority can be wrong. Truth must be earned, not inherited. When you question your beliefs, you develop intellectual independence. You learn to think for yourself, instead of letting the world think for you. This independence is uncomfortable because it forces you to stand without the safety of crowd validation, but it makes you powerful. Weak thinkers depend on consensus. Strong thinkers depend on logic. A genius stands alone mentally long before the world ever understands them. To question your beliefs, don't ask, is this right? Ask, why do I believe this is right? Genius comes from examining the foundation of an idea, not just the idea itself. The deeper you investigate the reasons behind a belief, the more you expose assumptions, biases, and perspectives you overlooked. This process doesn't destroy knowledge, it purifies it. Knowledge becomes sharper when passed through the filter of why. People rarely defend beliefs because they're true. They defend beliefs because they bring comfort. A belief that gives certainty feels safer than a truth that demands growth. Genius thinkers sacrifice comfort for clarity. They would rather be temporarily challenged than permanently ignorant. They understand that discomfort is a small price to pay for accuracy. Growth demands truth, not reassurance. To question your beliefs effectively, you must become aware of cognitive biases. Confirmation bias makes you seek evidence that supports what you already believe. Familiarity bias makes you trust ideas that feel comfortable. Group bias makes you accept ideas that are popular. These biases distort reality, shaping your thinking without your awareness. A genius learns to catch bias before bias controls their mind. The mind loves shortcuts, and beliefs are shortcuts disguised as knowledge. When a belief becomes automatic, you stop analyzing situations fully. You rely on old conclusions instead of fresh reasoning. Genius thinkers force their mind to think again. They don't allow old beliefs to answer new questions. They understand that growth requires new thinking, not recycled certainty. A belief should guide you, not blind you. One of the most powerful questions you can ask is, "What if I'm wrong?" This question doesn't weaken your thinking, it strengthens it. It forces you to search for alternative explanations, consider opposing viewpoints, and examine evidence more thoroughly. Weak thinkers fear being wrong. Genius thinkers fear believing wrong things. The pursuit of truth matters more to them than the comfort of being correct. Questioning your beliefs doesn't mean discarding them impulsively. It means testing them carefully. A strong belief can survive scrutiny. A weak belief collapses under examination. Genius thinkers test their ideas the way scientists test hypotheses. They challenge, observe, experiment, compare, and verify. The goal is not to be right, but to reach truth. Truth is discovered through pressure, not acceptance. The mind becomes wiser when it acknowledges its limits. Admitting, "I don't know," is not ignorance, it is intelligence. It creates space for learning, curiosity, and exploration. People who pretend to know everything stop learning. Genius thinkers stay students forever. They treat knowledge as an evolving journey, not a finished possession. The wisest minds remain humble enough to grow. To question your beliefs, learn to argue against yourself. Take your strongest idea and look for weaknesses. Ask yourself how someone with an opposing view would respond. Challenge your logic from every angle. This internal debate sharpens your reasoning and reveals gaps in your thinking. Genius thinkers do not protect their ideas, they test them. Ideas that survive this process become powerful tools. Many beliefs exist not because they are true, but because they are easy. The brain prefers simplicity. It wants answers without effort. But genius requires complexity. Complex questions don't have simple answers, and meaningful answers take time. To think like a genius, you must be willing to navigate complexity instead of running toward easy conclusions. Truth often hides behind difficulty. To question beliefs, you must welcome contradiction. Most people avoid ideas that challenge them, but contradiction is a gift. It reveals blind spots in your thinking and expands your perspective. When two opposing ideas both contain truth, your mind becomes more nuanced. Genius thinkers do not seek absolute certainty. They explore the tension between ideas and extract insight from both sides. A major part of questioning beliefs is separating truth from emotion. Your feelings about an idea do not determine its accuracy. You may hate a truth that could save you or love a belief that is harming you. Emotional attachment blinds intelligence. Genius thinkers step outside emotion to examine reality as it is, not as they want it to be. They prioritize clarity over comfort. Questioning your beliefs requires seeing information as fluid, not fixed. New evidence can update old conclusions. New experiences can reshape old perspectives. The world changes, and knowledge must change with it. Genius thinkers adapt their beliefs as reality evolves. They treat ideas like software, updated, patched, improved, or replaced when needed. A mind that remains static becomes outdated. To question your beliefs, you must listen to ideas you disagree with. Instead of shutting down opposing views, examine them. You don't have to adopt them, but understanding them improves your thinking. When you understand alternative perspectives, your own beliefs become more informed. Weak thinkers avoid disagreement. Genius thinkers study it, because truth is often hidden among conflicting ideas. Questioning beliefs requires learning from multiple sources, not echo chambers. If you only consume information that supports your current thinking, you become narrow-minded. A genius mind is broad, capable of integrating knowledge from different fields, cultures, and perspectives. It seeks contrast instead of validation. Intelligence expands when knowledge intersects, not when it repeats. The mind becomes stronger when it confronts its own hypocrisy. Sometimes you live by beliefs you don't actually follow. You say you value honesty, but you lie to protect yourself. You say you want growth, but you avoid discomfort. You say you want truth, but you cling to comforting lies. To question beliefs, you must notice when your actions contradict your stated values. Genius requires self-honesty. To question your beliefs, stop assuming that your perspective is normal. What you see as obvious might be strange to someone from a different culture, upbringing, or life experience. Genius thinkers learn to detach from their personal lens and see the world from multiple viewpoints. When you step outside yourself, you realize that your beliefs are only one version of possible reality. Questioning beliefs requires patience. Insight doesn't appear instantly. You must sit with questions, reflect, analyze, research, and reconsider. The mind needs time to reorganize itself around deeper understanding. Genius thinkers give their thoughts space to develop. They don't rush to conclusions. Slow thinking is not weakness, it is wisdom. The more you question your beliefs, the more independent you become. You no longer rely on society to define truth for you. You stop needing approval to validate your thinking. You stop following the majority simply because they are loud. You become mentally sovereign. A genius mind does not outsource truth. It earns truth through effort. Questioning beliefs doesn't make you uncertain. It makes you accurate. Certainty without examination creates blind spots. Uncertainty with examination creates wisdom. Genius thinkers are comfortable with evolving knowledge. They don't cling to old conclusions for stability. They build stability through understanding, not assumption. Accuracy is their security. Many people fear questioning beliefs because they think it will leave them with nothing solid to stand on. But questioning does not destroy values. It strengthens them. When beliefs are tested and refined, they become more reliable. Genius thinking does not weaken conviction, it purifies it. You become more certain of what is true because you have challenged it, not because you inherited it. To question beliefs, you must challenge tradition when tradition no longer makes sense. Many routines, rules, and expectations persist simply because no one re-examined them. Society often punishes those who question convention, but innovation is born from such questioning. Genius thinkers respect tradition, but are not limited by it. They rebuild tradition on truth, not repetition. Questioning beliefs means trading assumptions for evidence. Instead of believing something because it feels true, search for proof. Investigate motives. Examine data. Look at long-term effects. Evidence-based thinking protects you from emotional deception. Genius relies on observation, not assumption. Truth must be proven, not assumed. To question beliefs, you must accept that knowledge is bigger than your current understanding. There is always more to learn, more to uncover, more to update. A genius mind doesn't seek to know everything. It seeks to know more than it knew yesterday. Growth happens in increments. You don't become wise in a day, you become wise daily. When you question your beliefs, you gain freedom from manipulation. No one can control a mind that thinks for itself. Advertisers, politicians, religious fanatics, charismatic influencers all lose power over someone who demands evidence instead of obedience. Genius thinking protects you from mental slavery. Freedom begins with skepticism. Questioning beliefs strengthens your decision-making. Instead of acting out of habit, fear, or pressure, you make choices from clarity. You evaluate options based on reasoning, not tradition. You build choices with logic, not impulse. Genius thinkers don't rely on mood or trends. Their decisions are the results of thought, not reaction. When you question your beliefs, your life becomes more intentional. You stop living based on assumptions and start living based on understanding. You no longer follow paths handed to you. You create your own. Genius thinking is not about being clever. It is about being conscious. Consciousness leads to direction. Direction leads to purpose. The more you question beliefs, the more adaptable you become. Change doesn't threaten those who understand the world. They can pivot, grow, and evolve. Beliefs become tools instead of traps. Intelligence becomes fluid instead of rigid. Genius thinkers don't fear change because they do not build their identity on unexamined ideas. They build it on awareness. Questioning your beliefs requires courage because you may discover truths that demand action. Some beliefs protect your ego, excuse your behavior, or justify your avoidance. When those beliefs collapse, you must grow. Genius thinking is not just intellectual, it is transformational. It demands responsibility. Truth requires action. In the end, questioning your beliefs is not about destroying them. It is about strengthening your mind. You question your beliefs so they don't control you. You test them so they don't trap you. You examine them so they don't blind you. Genius is not the mind that knows the most. It is the mind that sees the most clearly, and clarity comes only to those who challenge the limits of what they believe. You begin to grow intellectually when you stop trying to be right and start trying to understand. Many people think arguments are battles to win, but the wise use them as tools to learn. A discussion should be a doorway, not a war. Instead of defending your view stubbornly, ask the other person why they think differently. Ask what shaped their perspective. When you stop competing with ideas and start exploring them, your thinking expands instead of hardens. Questioning beliefs requires noticing the language you use. Every word you think or speak shapes perception. Words like always, never, obviously, and everyone knows shut down curiosity instantly. They trick your brain into believing that analysis is unnecessary. Replace absolute language with inquiry. In some cases, what makes this true? What are the exceptions? Language can imprison thought or liberate it. Genius chooses language that opens possibility. The mind becomes freer when it learns to separate truth from identity. If you tie a belief to your identity, your religion, your nationality, your profession, your personality, questioning that belief feels like questioning yourself. This emotional trap prevents growth. You must see beliefs as tools you use, not parts of who you are. When beliefs become flexible, identity becomes stronger, not weaker. Strength comes from adaptability, not rigidity. To question beliefs effectively, examine where they lead. A belief should not only be judged by whether it feels right, but by what it produces. Does it create growth or stagnation? Does it encourage learning or limit it? Does it make you wiser or more fearful? Some beliefs are comforting but destructive. Others are uncomfortable but transformative. Genius evaluates beliefs based on consequences, not comfort. A smart mind doesn't cling to beliefs out of pride. Pride is the enemy of learning. Once you become proud of what you know, you stop updating your knowledge. Pride convinces you that changing your mind is weakness. But true strength is the willingness to evolve. A genius would rather change their mind 1,000 times than defend a false idea once. Pride protects ego. Questioning protects truth. Beliefs should serve you, not control you. When a belief restricts your growth, closes your mind, or creates unnecessary fear, it must be re-examined. You should ask, is this belief helping me or limiting me? Does it bring clarity or confusion? Did I choose it, or was it given to me? A belief that cannot answer these questions clearly may not deserve a place in your thinking. Genius is selective with what it holds on to. The mind must learn to question the source of beliefs, not just the belief itself. Who told you? Why did they tell you? Did they benefit from your belief? Often ideas are spread not because they are true, but because someone gains power from them. Advertising convinces you to desire what you don't need. Politics convinces you to fear what is exaggerated. Culture convinces you to believe what maintains order, not truth. Genius looks at motives before accepting facts. Questioning beliefs demands curiosity about opposites. Every strong belief should be examined through its reverse. If you believe success requires hard work, also explore how success sometimes requires timing, networks, or strategy. If you believe kindness is always good, examine how misplaced kindness can enable harm. Studying opposites expands understanding. Genius finds truth between extremes, not inside them. To question beliefs deeply, learn to ask, who benefits if this idea stays unchallenged? Some beliefs are convenient for society because they keep people obedient. Some beliefs are convenient for businesses because they increase consumption. Some are convenient for manipulators because they keep minds weak. Genius thinkers recognize that ideas can be tools of influence. They value truth more than tradition, more than authority, more than acceptance. Your beliefs should evolve as your life evolves. A belief that served you as a child may not serve you as an adult. A belief from a painful experience might have protected you in the past, but may limit you now. To grow, you must periodically reassess your internal world. Ask yourself, is this belief still true now that I know more? Genius thinkers update their beliefs as they update themselves. To learn to question everything, you must develop inner neutrality. Neutrality allows you to examine ideas without needing an immediate judgment. You neither accept nor reject quickly. You hold an idea in your mind and study it. Neutrality is challenging because the mind loves instant conclusions. It wants closure. But closure too soon blocks truth. Genius does not rush to decide. It waits until reality reveals itself. You must learn to challenge beliefs hidden in everyday phrases. Statements like, life is hard, money is evil, people can't change, success is luck, or love always hurts, are absorbed unconsciously. They become lenses that distort perception. Instead of accepting these assumptions, ask, is this universally true? Who said this first? What are the exceptions? Genius questions the ordinary because the ordinary shapes your entire worldview. To question beliefs, you must practice intellectual humility, the willingness to be educated by reality. Intellectual humility does not mean insecurity, it means openness. You become willing to replace outdated beliefs with upgraded ones. You become willing to say, I learned something new today. A humble mind learns forever. A proud mind dies with its old assumptions. Genius values truth more than ego. The fastest way to grow intellectually is to expose yourself to ideas that challenge you. Read books that disagree with your opinions. Listen to people outside your social and cultural bubble. Explore subjects you've never considered. Stretching your mind is uncomfortable, but it expands your mental horizon. Staying only with what you agree with makes your thinking stale. Genius grows at the edges of discomfort. To question what you believe, you must develop awareness of emotional attachment. Some beliefs make you feel safe, others justify your behavior. If a belief feels like protection, question it twice. Ask, am I believing this because it is true or because it makes life easier? Truth is sometimes heavy. False beliefs are light, but they cost you later. Genius does not settle for easy comfort when truth demands effort. Questioning beliefs doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means testing everything. You keep what is strong. You refine what is incomplete. You discard what is false. This is how your mind becomes powerful, not through constant destruction, but through intelligent rebuilding. Genius is a craftsman of belief, shaping ideas into tools for understanding, not cages for identity. Your beliefs should align with reality, not fantasy. Fantasy comforts the mind temporarily, but weakens it long-term. If you believe the world should be a certain way, but it isn't, your belief must adapt to reality. not reality to your belief. Genius thinkers do not argue with what exists. They learn from it. They do not demand that life match their imagination. They upgrade their perception to match life. To question everything effectively, you must become skilled at asking evidence-focused questions. Instead of asking, "Is this true?" ask, "How do I know it's true? Where is the proof? What would disprove it?" This kind of thinking forces clarity. It reduces confusion. Emotion becomes less influential. Facts rise above assumption. Genius thinking demands evidence, not assumption. Mental growth begins when you stop defending beliefs you cannot explain. If you cannot describe why something is true, you don't understand it. You only remember it. Understanding requires structure, reasoning, logic, and depth. Repeating a belief is not intelligence. Explaining it is. Genius thinkers do not memorize truth, they comprehend it. Comprehension requires questioning. You must also question beliefs that flatter you. It is easy to believe you are always right, misunderstood, more capable than others, or destined for success without effort. These beliefs feed ego, not wisdom. Genius questions praises as much as criticism. It asks, "Am I truly as capable as I think? What evidence supports this? What work must I do to deserve this belief?" Self-questioning builds strength. To master questioning your beliefs, become comfortable with being wrong. Being wrong is not failure, it is feedback. It teaches you more than being right ever will. Every incorrect assumption you uncover strengthens your thinking. Every belief you outgrow increases your wisdom. Genius thinkers are not afraid of being wrong. They are afraid of staying wrong. The mind becomes sharper when it learns to differentiate between opinion and truth. Many people confuse their feelings, preferences, or cultural expectations with reality. Opinions are personal. They do not make universal laws. Genius thinkers separate personal bias from objective understanding. They recognize that truth exists outside their preferences. To question beliefs, you must seek understanding, not validation. If you search for information only to support what you already believe, you create a mental prison. You become a slave to your existing thoughts. Genius thinkers search for information that challenges them. They seek truth, even if it contradicts what they once believed. Truth matters more than comfort. Some beliefs should be questioned not because they are wrong, but because they are incomplete. A half-truth can be more deceptive than a lie. You must explore ideas to their full depth. A genius does not settle for partial understanding. They ask more, dig deeper, and pursue clarity until the idea is whole. Completion is the difference between opinion and insight. Questioning beliefs allows you to break inherited limitations. If you grew up hearing money corrupts, you might avoid wealth. If you heard dreams aren't realistic, you might sabotage your ambition. If you were told people don't change, you might stop growing. Questioning beliefs is how you break invisible ceilings placed on your life. Genius rewrites inherited limits. Your beliefs shape your perception, and perception shapes your decisions. Every action you take stems from what you believe. If your beliefs are narrow, your life becomes narrow. If your beliefs are expansive, your life becomes expansive. A genius life is built on examined beliefs, not inherited ones. Questioning is not just thinking, it is designing your future. To question beliefs properly, you must separate information from interpretation. Two people can experience the same event and believe different things about it. Interpretation shapes meaning. If your interpretation is biased or fearful, your beliefs become distorted. Genius thinkers analyze both the event and their interpretation. They correct perception as much as they correct logic. Many beliefs are built to protect identity, not reveal truth. If you believe you are incapable, that belief protects you from trying. If you believe life is unfair, that belief protects you from responsibility. If you believe others are to blame, that belief protects you from growth. Questioning beliefs means asking, what responsibility am I avoiding? Genius prefers growth over comfort. You must learn to view beliefs as working hypotheses. They are not final, they are useful until improved. This mindset prevents rigidity. It encourages constant learning. Genius thinkers hold beliefs lightly but think deeply. They don't grip ideas like possessions. They refine them like tools. A belief is valuable only if it remains useful, accurate, and expandable. Questioning beliefs gives you mental clarity. When you remove false assumptions, you see reality more clearly. Decisions become easier, relationships become healthier, goals become more aligned, confusion fades. Genius thinking simplifies life not by ignoring complexity, but by removing unnecessary distortion. Clear beliefs lead to clear choices. When you question beliefs, you become a conscious thinker instead of an unconscious follower. You stop living on autopilot. You no longer inherit ideas blindly. You build a mind that belongs to you. Most people get their beliefs from the world. Genius thinkers build their beliefs for the world. Thought becomes creation, not imitation. The greater your ability to question beliefs, the fewer mental traps you fall into. You stop believing things because they are popular. You stop adopting ideas because they feel comfortable. You stop being manipulated by fear-based narratives. You become intellectually immune. Genius is a mind protected by awareness. To question everything is not to doubt everything. It is to verify everything. Doubt alone is chaos. Verification brings order. Questioning without learning is confusion. Questioning with discovery is wisdom. Genius thinkers do not live in suspicion. They live in clarity. Their questioning leads somewhere. It leads to understanding. The more you question, the more freedom you gain. Your life expands when your beliefs expand. You think more clearly, choose more wisely, and live more intentionally. Questioning is not a rejection of what you once believed. It is the evolution of what you are becoming. Genius is never stuck. It grows, updates, and rises. In the end, questioning everything you believe is not about tearing down your mind. It is about upgrading it. You do not lose stability. You gain awareness. You do not lose identity. You build a stronger one. You do not lose truth. You earn it. Genius thinking requires courage, humility, honesty, and commitment to understanding. When you learn to question, you learn to see. And once you learn to see, you will never think blindly again. Chapter 6. Transform ideas into solutions, not thoughts. Most people believe thinking is progress, but ideas alone do nothing. You can fill your mind with inspiration, insight, plans, goals, and theories, but until an idea becomes action, it remains just a thought. Genius is not measured by how much you think, but by how much you create from thinking. A great idea without execution is just a dream. A small idea turned into action can change everything. The world rewards solutions, not imagination. Thoughts have value only when they become results. Transformation begins when you start asking, what can I build from this? Instead of, what should I think about this? Most people overanalyze an idea instead of shaping it. They look for perfect steps, perfect conditions, perfect confidence. But solutions don't need perfection, only direction. The moment you turn a thought into a small action, you start learning through movement instead of imagination. Genius begins not at the moment of inspiration, but at the moment of implementation. Ideas become powerful when you treat them like experiments, not commandments. You don't need to know whether something will work before you try it. You need curiosity more than certainty. Instead of asking, will this idea succeed? Ask, what can I discover if I try this? Discovery is more valuable than prediction. Solutions come from testing possibilities, not waiting for guarantees. Genius minds experiment their way to answers others only think about. If you want ideas to become solutions, train yourself to break them into actionable pieces. A solution is not born fully shaped. It is built in fragments. One step today, one adjustment tomorrow, one refinement after feedback. Most people expect the entire answer before they begin. They want clarity before action. But clarity is what action creates. Genius doesn't seek full vision before moving. It builds the vision by moving. Execution turns ideas into learning. Thinking only teaches you what could happen. Doing teaches you what actually happens. A mind that only plans gains predictions. A mind that applies gains wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge shaped by reality. When you turn ideas into solutions, you collect real data from life instead of guesses from your imagination. Genius values results over theories, experience over speculation, execution over perfection. The difference between thinkers and creators is responsibility. Thinkers expect the idea to carry itself. Creators carry the idea through challenges, adjustments, mistakes, and persistence. Solutions demand responsibility, patience, and refinement. Anyone can think once. Few can persist in building. Solutions are born through revision, not inspiration. Genius doesn't abandon an idea when it gets difficult. It evolves it. Many people confuse complexity with intelligence. They create ideas with too many steps, too many rules, too many expectations, and then they never start. A solution should be simple enough to begin immediately. Complexity before action kills momentum, but simplicity builds momentum that can later handle complexity. A genius mind simplifies first and expands later. They reduce an idea to the next small step. That step is what transforms a thought into reality. Solutions are created by asking, "What can I do with what I have?" Most people wait for more money, more talent, more knowledge, more permission. They think they need more before they begin. But waiting destroys ideas. Resources grow when you start. They don't appear before you start. Genius builds with what is available, not what is ideal. Solutions come from movement, not fantasy. Turning ideas into solutions requires discipline. You must train yourself to follow through even when excitement fades. Inspiration is temporary, creativity is emotional, but execution is a habit. Without discipline, your ideas will be prisoners inside your mind. Genius thinking is sustained by structure, not passion. Passion starts projects. Discipline finishes them. A solution is not born from energy, it is born from consistency. To transform ideas into solutions, you must value progress more than perfection. If you refuse to begin until conditions are right, you will never begin. If you refuse to release your work until it is flawless, you will never produce anything. Perfection is the enemy of impact. Solutions do not need to impress, they need to work. Genius understands that small, useful progress beats big, perfect theory. The moment you start building, you must also expect failure. Failure is part of the shaping process. It refines ideas into solutions. A failed attempt is feedback, not defeat. Most people quit after failure because they confuse imperfection with impossibility. Genius sees failure as information. It reveals flaws, exposes weaknesses, and highlights improvements. Failure is not a wall, it is a tool. Turning ideas into solutions demands that you think with purpose, not noise. Most thinking is random wandering, imagining scenarios, worrying about outcomes, comparing yourself to others, replaying doubts. Purposeful thinking asks, what is the next step? What can be tested today? What action creates clarity? Purpose turns thoughts into strategy. Strategy turns thoughts into results. Genius thinks to direct action, not to entertain imagination. Genius focuses on impact. Instead of wanting an idea to be impressive, they want it to be useful. A small solution that solves a real problem is more powerful than a brilliant idea that solves nothing. People respect results, not potential. The mind becomes valuable when it produces outcomes others can feel, see, or use. The goal is not to think brilliantly, it is to make thinking matter. To build solutions, learn to collect feedback from reality instead of emotions. You might feel uncertain, afraid, impatient, or embarrassed. Those feelings are not feedback, they are noise. Real feedback comes from testing output, results, data, response, performance. A solution must be shaped by reality, not by what you fear or desire. Genius minds listen to evidence more than feelings. Ideas grow through repetition. Most solutions become successful because they are improved repeatedly. You revise, refine, adjust, and correct. Each improvement increases effectiveness. A thinker wants a perfect idea instantly. A creator shapes it through stages. Genius sees solutions as living structures, something to sculpt continually. Creation is not an event, it is a process. Transforming ideas requires comfort with imperfection at the beginning. The first version will not look like the final success. But if you judge your first attempt by your final expectations, you will destroy progress before it matures. Genius separates early progress from final mastery. They allow beginnings to be messy because they understand that mastery grows inside messiness. You must learn to reduce ideas to actions that fit into your daily life. A solution must be executable with consistency. Genius thinking respects time. It fits ideas into routines instead of waiting for rare moments of inspiration. When you turn thinking into habit, your mind becomes a system of creation, not bursts of creativity. Solutions are built by rhythm, not random enthusiasm. A powerful solution solves a problem at its root, not just at the surface. Most ideas are bandages, temporary fixes, quick tricks, inspirational quotes. Deep solutions require understanding cause, not only effect. Genius solves by asking, why does this problem exist? What is sustaining it? Real transformation happens when you address the structural cause beneath the symptom. Thought becomes mastery when it penetrates depth. Solutions become easier when you detach them from ego. Ego wants credit, recognition, applause, and visibility. But solutions do not care who gets the credit. Genius focuses on function, not fame. When you stop thinking about how others will judge your work, your mind becomes free to create effectively. Ego complicates solutions. Purpose simplifies them. To transform ideas, you must differentiate between thinking and planning. Thinking explores possibilities. Planning organizes execution. If you try to plan before thinking or think without planning, you overwhelm yourself. Genius alternates between thinking and structuring. They explore, then arrange, then act. Their mind works in cycles that build outcomes from imagination. Ideas become solutions when you connect them to real needs. Genius thinking always asks, who does this help? How does this solve something? What value does it create? Solutions become valuable when they improve someone's life, simplify a task, solve a problem, save time, reduce pain, or increase opportunity. The more directly an idea impacts reality, the more powerful it becomes. Learning to transform ideas requires emotional resilience. You must build even when discouraged. You must continue when no one notices. You must persist when results are slow. Ideas mature gradually. They demand faith in the unseen. Genius minds are not driven by immediate reward. They build because they understand that slow creation compounds into massive impact over time. One of the biggest obstacles to turning ideas into solutions is overthinking possibilities of failure. You imagine every scenario where the plan might collapse. But the mind cannot predict complexity without action. You must use reality as the testing ground. Genius moves despite uncertainty, because uncertainty disappears only after movement. Ideas become clearer through action, not guesswork. To master idea transformation, we must learn to measure progress by iteration, not outcome. If you improved your idea today, even slightly, you progressed. If you tested something new, you progressed. If you replaced confusion with data, you progressed. Genius values small continuous improvement more than instant success. A solution grows like a seed, not an explosion. A solution needs boundaries to thrive. Ideas without deadlines, rules, or constraints dissolve into endless thinking. Define when to begin, what to produce, what resources to use, and when to evaluate. Constraints force creativity. They direct your mind toward what matters. Genius uses constraints as tools to focus ideas into real output. Freedom without structure destroys productivity. Transforming ideas into solutions requires reducing distraction. When your mind is scattered, your idea remains scattered. Build environments that protect concentration. Set times where you work without interruption. Remove noise, limit comparison, control devices. Deep work gives ideas the space they need to become strategies. Genius doesn't work harder, they work deeper. To build solutions, visualize execution, not success. Most dreamers imagine the applause at the end. Genius imagines the steps in the middle. They see the work, not the glory. They see the obstacles, not just the final scene. Vision becomes strategy when you focus not on the destination, but on the road leading there. That is how imagination becomes design. Ideas must be tested quickly. If you delay execution until you feel prepared, the window of opportunity might close. Genius does not wait to feel ready. They aim to gain readiness through movement. They test ideas fast, gather feedback early, and iterate before fear grows. Speed of testing matters more than speed of thinking. Quick testing turns thoughts into information. Genius thinkers also abandon ideas that no longer serve the solution. Attachment kills progress. You must be willing to let go of brilliant but dysfunctional ideas. Instead of protecting old vision, you protect the outcome. You sacrifice ego for effectiveness. Solutions are shaped by what works, not by what you emotionally prefer. Wisdom is the flexibility to choose results over pride. To turn ideas into solutions, master the art of simplicity in communication. An idea must be explainable in clear language. If you cannot articulate the solution simply, you do not fully understand it. The more your thinking becomes clear, the more usable it becomes. Genius simplifies the complex enough to teach it. Communication is part of creation. Ideas turn into solutions faster when you collaborate. Not because others will do the work for you, but because other minds can expose blind spots, add perspective, and refine logic. Feedback from intelligent people accelerates growth. Genius does not isolate. Genius curates smart input. Collaboration shapes ideas into mature solutions. A solution should also be adaptable. The world changes, needs evolve, and information expands. A rigid solution becomes obsolete. Flexible solutions survive. Genius creates systems that can scale, adapt, and update. They think beyond today's outcome and design for long-term relevance. Adaptability turns ideas into innovations. To transform ideas, you must view your mind as a workshop, not a storage room. Thoughts are not meant to sit. They are meant to be shaped. The more frequently you build from your thinking, the stronger your mental tools become. Thinking stops being chaotic when it has a purpose. Genius doesn't store ideas, they extract value from them. Execution transforms identity. The moment you turn a thought into a solution, you stop being just a thinker. You become a maker. You begin seeing yourself differently. You build confidence not from dreaming, but from producing. Each completed idea upgrades your belief in yourself. Genius is not born with confidence. They earn it through creation. In the end, turning ideas into solutions requires one core mindset: value creation over mental comfort. Thinking feels safe. Building feels vulnerable. But everything meaningful comes from creation. You must be willing to leave the comfort of imagination and enter the uncertainty of action. Genius thinking is not about being smart. It is about being willing to build. The mind becomes brilliant when it learns that thoughts are only the beginning. Ideas are seeds. Solutions are gardens. The world does not admire seeds. It admires what grows from them. Genius minds plant, nurture, test, fail, refine, and persevere. They turn imagination into impact. They transform thoughts into tools. They build instead of think endlessly. You must learn to convert inspiration into a system. Inspiration is emotional. A system is structural. Inspiration fades, but a system keeps producing results long after the emotion disappears. When you feel motivated, don't just feel. Build a structure that works even on days you don't. Genius is not a mood, it is a mechanism. You should not depend on how you feel to create. You should depend on the systems you've built. Systems turn human inconsistency into consistent output. One of the most important steps in turning ideas into solutions is learning to simplify decisions. If every decision feels heavy, you waste energy on thinking rather than creating. Genius reduces choices, fixed schedules, limited tools, clear steps, defined priorities. Decision fatigue kills execution. When you reduce the number of small choices you make daily, you conserve mental energy for building. Simplicity frees creativity from exhaustion. A solution requires measurable action. If you cannot measure what you are building, you cannot improve it. Vague effort creates vague results. Track something. Progress, tests, output, learning, wins, failures. Measurement pushes ideas into reality by forcing accountability. Data speaks louder than emotion. Genius minds measure not to impress, but to learn. Measurement transforms effort into strategy. You must think like a builder, not just an artist. An artist imagines beauty, a builder constructs function. The greatest creations combine both. Beauty shaped by structure. When you build solutions, you must ask, how does this work? Not just, how does this feel? Emotion inspires. Logic engineers. The genius mind marries inspiration with architecture. Creation becomes both expressive and effective. To transform ideas into solutions, eliminate overthinking by shortening the time between thinking and action. The longer you wait to execute, the more doubt grows. The mind creates chaos when left idle too long. Execution cuts through mental noise. Action clarifies what thinking complicates. Genius compresses the gap between thought and experiment. They think, then they test. Many people are stuck because they believe they need a perfect plan before beginning. But plans evolve through practice. You cannot plan accurately for what you have not yet experienced. The brain needs real-world feedback. Genius expects plans to change through execution. Plans are guides, not guarantees. A plan becomes intelligent only after reality has tested it. Solutions are born when you accept responsibility for outcomes. If you blame circumstances, you will never build. If you blame time, you will never begin. If you blame others, you will never lead. Taking ownership of execution frees you from excuses. Responsibility is not a burden, it is a form of power. Genius controls their results by controlling their actions, not by waiting for ideal conditions. To turn ideas into solutions, the mind must switch from theoretical questions to practical ones. Instead of asking, "Is this idea good?" ask, "How can I make it useful?" Instead of asking, "Will this work?" ask, "What can I test right now?" Practical questions ignite movement. Movement creates momentum. Momentum builds solutions. Genius trains their brain to think in actionable language. Execution requires learning to endure boredom. Real progress is repetitive. Practicing, refining, adjusting, testing, improving. These are not thrilling moments, but they are transformative ones. Many quit not because their idea lacks potential, but because they cannot tolerate the mundane parts of creation. Genius embraces boredom as the cost of mastery. They persist through monotony to reach excellence. You must learn to create results even when you don't feel inspired. Inspiration should not be the engine, it should be the spark. The engine is routine, discipline, repetition, and consistency. Most people wait for inspiration, but genius creates predictably because they build habits that outperform emotion. The most powerful work is produced not when inspiration strikes, but when discipline shows up without permission. To turn ideas into solutions, train yourself to seek clarity before complexity. Many people try to build complex systems before they understand the simplest version of the problem. If you can solve the simple version first, you will understand how to scale it. If you cannot solve the simple version, the complex structure will collapse. Genius builds clarity at the foundation, not decoration on the surface. An idea becomes real when you make it visible. Write it, map it, draw it, model it, sketch it, or outline it. Visibility forces structure. It converts fuzzy thinking into concrete shape. Once an idea leaves your mind and enters physical form, you can refine it, adjust it, and work with it. Thinking alone is invisible. Genius externalizes thoughts so they can be shaped. Solutions evolve through constraints. When you work with limited tools, time, or resources, creativity becomes sharper. Innovation thrives within boundaries because they force new approaches. Constraints eliminate laziness. They demand efficiency. Genius loves constraint because it accelerates innovation. They don't wait for more. They maximize what exists. Turning ideas into solutions requires emotional detachment from the outcome. Attachment causes fear, fear causes hesitation, and hesitation ruins execution. You must be willing to let the first version fail, be misunderstood, or look imperfect. Success grows through repeated release, not hidden perfection. Genius thinks like a scientist, not a performer. They release, observe, adjust, and evolve. A solution becomes powerful when you align it with purpose. Purpose fuels persistence. When your work serves something greater than your ego, progress, service, utility, impact, you endure challenges with strength. People who build for recognition collapse when recognition is absent. People who build for purpose endure regardless of applause. Genius ties execution to meaning, not validation. To convert ideas into solutions, let go of fantasy timelines. Real progress is unpredictable. Sometimes you advance slowly. Sometimes breakthroughs happen overnight. You must commit to the process without demanding instant reward. Impatience destroys great solutions before they mature. Genius does not rush greatness. They respect the pace required to produce excellence. The ability to build is strengthened by problem-solving, not avoidance. Successful execution requires facing obstacles directly. Most people run from obstacles. Genius studies them. Obstacles expose the weaknesses in an idea. They reveal what needs improvement. They force innovation. Instead of fearing problems, genius uses them as sculpting tools. When you turn ideas into solutions, you must learn the difference between persistence and stubbornness. Persistence adapts to improve. Stubbornness refuses to change even when evidence demands it. Genius listens to feedback from reality. They adjust angles, approaches, and tools. They preserve the mission, not the method. The goal remains constant, but the path evolves. Turning thought into creation requires momentum more than motivation. Momentum is built through frequent action, not rare effort. A small, consistent step has more transformative power than a single burst of effort followed by collapse. Genius doesn't sprint sporadically. They walk daily. Consistency compounds creativity. A solution grows when you prioritize process over potential. Potential is just imagination of what could be. Process is what actually builds. Only a disciplined process can unlock potential. Most people admire their idea more than they build it. Genius puts emotion aside and commits to execution. They understand that potential without process rots into regret. Ideas mature through iteration. You don't improve a solution by thinking longer. You improve it by testing faster. Each version you produce gives you clearer insight. Each attempt contains information. Genius speeds up learning by increasing iteration. The faster they test, the faster they improve. They evolve through cycles of execution. Turning ideas into solutions requires protecting your attention from mental parasites, distractions, comparisons, doubts, impatience, fear. These forces drain execution. You must treat your mind like a workspace, not a playground. Protecting your attention is not optional, it is foundational. Genius guards their focus with discipline. A solution becomes effective when you consider the user experience. Think about how someone interacts with your idea, how it benefits them, how it simplifies their life. A solution that changes someone's experience is far more valuable than a clever thought that no one uses. Genius thinks from the perspective of others, not from the comfort of their imagination. To build solutions, track what works and remove what doesn't. Improvement is not only addition, it is subtraction. Remove waste, remove excess, remove distraction. Simplicity strengthens structure. Genius doesn't accumulate, they refine. They eliminate what does not serve the outcome. A solution must be adaptive to different contexts. The world is not static. People change, technology evolves, needs shift. Solutions that cannot adapt eventually break. Genius does not build rigid objects. They build flexible systems. Adaptation is a form of intelligence. Execution requires emotional neutrality toward feedback. Some feedback is noise, some is ignorance, some is gold. A genius mind learns to filter feedback, not react to all of it. They ask, does this improve the solution? If yes, they apply it. If no, they discard it. They serve the outcome, not opinions. Ideas become solutions when you honor deadlines. Deadlines force execution. They turn intentions into obligations. Genius uses time as a container for creativity. They schedule work the same way athletes schedule training. Without deadlines, ideas float in imagination forever. A deadline gives ideas a destination. To transform ideas, you must convert thinking time into building time. Thinking is necessary, but thinking alone is stagnation. Split your time into learning, planning, and doing. Action must consume the largest portion. Genius invests most of their time in creation, not contemplation. Solutions expand when you connect multiple ideas together. Innovation often comes not from new thoughts, but from combining existing ones in new ways. Genius sees relationships between seemingly unrelated concepts. They merge disciplines, tools, and perspectives. Integration turns isolated ideas into powerful solutions. To make ideas real, stop seeking praise and start seeking progress. Praise is temporary, but progress compounds. If you become dependent on validation, you build for applause instead of impact. Genius focuses on building well, not being admired. Respect follows results, not ambition. A crucial step in execution is learning to course correct without restarting. Many people abandon entire projects due to minor flaws. Genius makes adjustments without discarding. They fix direction without erasing progress. They know that improvement is editing, not restarting. Progress is preserved through correction, not abandonment. To turn ideas into solutions, set rules for yourself that support execution. Rules create discipline. A rule might be, work on the idea for 1 hour daily, or release one version each week. When rules guide you, you remove emotional choice. Genius avoids relying on willpower alone. They enforce systems. Building solutions requires trusting that growth will catch up to effort. You cannot see progress every day, but you can feel movement. Trusting the unseen is part of execution. Compounding is invisible until it becomes undeniable. Genius keeps going not because results are instant, but because they know results accumulate quietly. A solution must have a feedback loop. You must observe, learn, and adjust from every attempt. Without feedback, execution becomes blind. Smart builders watch the results of each action. They read data, reflect on mistakes, and respond strategically. Genius doesn't repeat action, they refine action. In execution, effort must eventually shift into efficiency. At first, everything takes longer. But as you refine steps, you must streamline them. Efficiency frees time and energy for deeper work. Genius evolves from working hard to working optimally. They turn effort into method, method into mastery. To turn ideas into solutions, recognize when you need help. Support is not weakness, it is strategy. A genius mind does not try to do everything alone. They delegate, collaborate, and leverage expertise. Help accelerates execution. Ego slows it. Solutions require patience with progress and impatience with excuses. You must be gentle with your development and strict with your discipline. The same patience that nurtures growth must not nurture laziness. Genius balances compassion for the journey with firmness toward action. The mind becomes brilliant when it learns that thinking is not enough. Creation is the measure of intelligence. A genius mind is not trapped in ideas. It releases them into the world. It tests them, shapes them, argues with them, and evolves them. It refuses to leave potential unrealized. In the end, turning ideas into solutions is the transformation from thinker to builder. A thinker imagines potential. A builder manifests it. A thinker collects inspiration. A builder generates value. Genius is not what exists inside the mind. It is what exits the mind and enters reality. Ideas become powerful only when they become tools that change the world. Chapter 7. Strengthen your perception, not just knowledge. Most people think intelligence comes from collecting information, but real genius comes from how you interpret it. Two people can read the same book, hear the same advice, or experience the same moment. One walks away unchanged, the other sees opportunity, patterns, and depth. Knowledge fills the mind, but perception shapes it. Without perception, information becomes clutter. With perception, even a small piece of knowledge becomes transformative. Perception is the ability to notice the invisible, the details others ignore, the connections others miss, the meaning behind the surface. Most people only see what life shows them. A genius sees why it happens, how it works, and what can be done with it. They don't just gather facts, they gather insight. Knowledge without perception is like a library without light. The information exists, but you can't use it. Strengthening perception requires slowing down. The world is loud, fast, and full of distractions that train your mind to skim instead of understand. People rush through conversations, content, work, and decisions without truly absorbing anything. Genius minds take time to observe, decode, and reflect. They listen without interrupting, watch without judgment, and think without rushing. Perception grows in stillness, not in noise. To sharpen perception, you must train your mind to ask better questions. Instead of asking, "What happened?" ask, "Why did it happen, and what does it mean?" Instead of asking, "Is this true?" ask, "Under what conditions could it be true or false?" Better questions lead to deeper understanding. Genius is not about knowing the answer, it's about knowing what to ask. A perceptive mind sees patterns. It notices repetition in behavior, systems, reactions, trends, emotions, and consequences. The world repeats itself: history, relationships, habits, mistakes. Most people miss patterns because they react emotionally instead of observing logically. Genius identifies patterns and uses them to predict outcomes, prevent failures, and create opportunities. Patterns reveal truth faster than information does. To build perception, train yourself to notice your own thoughts instead of reacting to them. Most people let thoughts control them instead of questioning them. They accept insecurity as truth, fear as logic, and impulse as direction. A genius observes their thoughts like a scientist, examining, questioning, and choosing what to believe. The ability to observe your own mind is the highest perception. A perceptive mind looks for cause and effect. Nothing happens without reason. Poor outcomes come from poor thinking. Good strategy creates success. Repeated anxiety comes from repeated thought patterns. Unsolved problems come from unexamined assumptions. If you learn to trace outcomes back to their origins, you gain control. Knowledge tells you what happened. Perception tells you why life keeps repeating it. To strengthen perception, read the emotion behind the words people say. Most communication is silent. People reveal fear, insecurity, envy, respect, curiosity, or dishonesty through tone, timing, reactions, avoidance, or exaggeration. Genius listens beneath the message. They pay attention to what someone doesn't say. Words show content. Silence shows intention. Perception understands both. A perceptive mind studies consequences, not feelings. People make choices based on moods, reactions, peer pressure, habits, or ego, then blame the world for their results. Genius minds don't care about emotional justification. They care about cause and effect. If the action leads to failure, it must change. If the action leads to success, it must grow. Perception disciplines emotion with logic. Knowledge grows when you hunger for facts. Perception grows when you hunger for truth. Facts change depending on context, perspective, culture, or timing. Truth is what remains clear, regardless of those changes. A genius does not memorize truth. They discover it through observation, experience, and logical thinking. Truth is not something you learn. It is something you uncover. Strengthen perception by looking beneath comfort and discomfort. People chase comfort because it feels safe, and they run from discomfort because it feels painful. But genius understands that comfort can be a trap, and discomfort can be a signal for growth. They don't judge experiences based on emotion. They judge them based on value. Perception sees pain as information, not punishment. A perceptive mind learns from mistakes quickly because it sees the lesson hidden inside them. Many people repeat the same failures because they react to pain rather than study it. Genius minds reflect. What led to this? What can I adjust? What pattern brought me here? Perception turns failure into feedback. It transforms mistakes into mastery. To strengthen perception, observe your own biases. Bias blocks clarity. You may defend a belief just because it comforts you, even if it harms you. You may reject an idea because it threatens your identity, even if it can elevate you. Genius minds don't protect their beliefs. They test them. They replace weak beliefs with stronger ones. Perception demands intellectual honesty. A perceptive mind sees beyond appearances. Most people judge by looks, labels, status, or popularity. Genius looks for substance, the character, the discipline, the patterns of behavior, the work ethic, the results. They don't get fooled by loudness, attraction, glamour, or trend. Perception protects you from illusion. It helps you see who people really are, not who they pretend to be. Strengthening perception requires learning from observation, not only from instruction. You can learn more from watching how a person works than from listening to what they preach. You can learn more from studying how something fails than from hearing how it succeeds. Genius minds harvest wisdom from reality. They learn with their eyes, not just their ears. Perception turns everyday life into education. A conversation becomes a psychology lesson. A failure becomes a strategy session. A habit becomes a research subject. A success becomes a blueprint. Genius minds don't wait for a classroom to learn. They treat every moment as a teacher. The world becomes their textbook, and experience becomes their curriculum. A perceptive mind understands that most people don't think. They react. They don't choose. They follow. They don't analyze. They repeat what they've heard. Genius minds step back from automatic thinking and ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this necessary? Perception frees you from mental autopilot. Strengthen perception by studying contradictions. Some truths are hidden in paradoxes: confidence without arrogance, discipline without rigidity, strength without aggression, humility without weakness. Most people think in extremes because it's easier. Genius minds think in balance because truth is rarely one-sided. Perception understands complexity without getting confused by it. A perceptive mind observes trends without being controlled by them. People follow trends for validation, not logic. When a belief becomes popular, most assume it must be correct. Genius questions popularity. They ask, who benefits from this trend? What does it cost me to follow it? What truth is being overlooked? Perception protects you from manipulation. Perception transforms knowledge into insight by applying it to context. A fact means nothing unless you understand when to use it, how to apply it, and why it matters. Genius sees when information becomes valuable. They know timing. They know relevance. Knowledge fills the mind. Perception makes it useful. Strengthening perception requires humility. If you believe you already understand everything, you stop learning. Ignorance grows in the minds of those who think they know enough. Genius minds are confident in their ability to learn, not in the belief they know everything. They remain students forever. Perception thrives in humility. A perceptive mind trains itself to slow down emotional reactions. Before responding, it thinks. Before judging, it observes. Before assuming, it questions. Emotion is fire, powerful when controlled, destructive when impulsive. Genius minds use emotion as energy, not as instruction. They respond with clarity, not reactivity. To strengthen perception, learn to read the consequence before you make the choice. Genius minds predict outcomes based on patterns, not hope. They don't need to experience every mistake to understand it. They see how similar choices ruined others, and they avoid the same path. Perception saves time by learning from the observed failures of others. A perceptive mind sees long-term impact hidden in short-term temptation. Easy choices create harder lives. Hard choices create easier lives. A genius mind evaluates beyond immediate pleasure. It asks, what is the cost? What future does this create? What habit does this build? Perception sees beyond the moment. Strengthening perception requires observing silence. People reveal themselves most clearly through what they don't say, what they avoid, what they exaggerate, what they defend too quickly. Silence exposes insecurity, desire, guilt, fear, and truth. A perceptive mind listens to silence the way others listen to words. A perceptive person understands that knowledge is useless without application. You can read 100 books on psychology, but if you cannot manage your emotions, the knowledge is hollow. You can memorize business strategies, but if you never build anything, you remain a spectator. Genius minds apply knowledge. Perception is proven through results. To build perception, you must detach from ego. Ego blocks insight because it tries to protect identity rather than improve it. If a new truth threatens your self-image, ego resists. If a correction exposes your flaw, ego becomes defensive. Genius welcomes correction because they value progress over pride. Perception requires intellectual courage. A perceptive mind recognizes manipulation. Most manipulation succeeds not through lies, but through half-truths, emotional pressure, fear, or identity triggers. Genius does not react to manipulative emotion. They step back and ask, what is the motive? Who benefits? What is the hidden leverage? Perception protects your autonomy. Strengthening perception means seeing difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is acquired. Wisdom is experienced, applied, tested, reflected upon, and integrated. Knowledge adds to the mind. Wisdom transforms the mind. Genius values wisdom because it changes how you live, not how much you know. A perceptive mind sees reality without needing it to be comfortable. Most people distort reality to protect feelings. They deny what hurts, avoid what challenges them, or exaggerate what makes them feel important. Genius minds accept uncomfortable truth without emotional panic. Perception expands when comfort is no longer a requirement. To build perception, practice connecting unrelated concepts. Creativity is born from unusual combinations. The greatest innovations came from merging disciplines: technology with design, psychology with business, philosophy with strategy. Genius sees bridges where others see gaps. Perception creates innovation by connecting unlikely ideas. Strengthening perception requires patience with observation. Insight does not appear instantly. It emerges gradually through repeated noticing, comparing, questioning, and reflecting. Most people rush to conclusion. Genius waits for depth. Perception grows like a photograph developing slowly. Clarity emerges over time. A perceptive mind notices opportunities where others see nothing. When most people complain, genius identifies profit. When most panic, genius strategizes. When most give up, genius adapts. Opportunity hides in problems, but only for eyes trained to see beyond frustration. Perception turns obstacles into tools. To build perception, learn the difference between intuition and impulse. Intuition is quiet wisdom built from experience and observation. Impulse is loud emotion built from fear or desire. Genius trusts intuition because it comes from patterns. They ignore impulses because they come from reaction. Perception knows the difference. Strengthening perception requires studying human nature. People behave in predictable ways, driven by self-interest, insecurity, fear, desire, validation, status, and comfort. When you understand human drives, you understand how the world works. Genius minds understand behavior not to manipulate it, but to navigate it with clarity. A perceptive mind sees how environment shapes thinking. The people you spend time with influence your beliefs, your focus, your expectations, your ambition. Genius becomes selective with surroundings. They choose environments that challenge their mind instead of numbing it. Perception protects your potential by protecting your atmosphere. To build perception, train yourself to observe intention instead of action. People do things for reasons deeper than what you see. If you understand motive, you understand behavior. If you understand motive, you can predict future actions. Genius looks beyond behavior into purpose. They solve problems at the level of cause, not symptom. A perceptive mind studies history because human beings repeat themselves. The names change, the technology changes, the culture changes, but human patterns do not. Genius learns from centuries instead of years. They see cycles in economics, psychology, politics, business, relationships. Perception grows when you widen your timeline. Strengthening perception demands that you stop worshipping intelligence. Intelligence can be narrow, arrogant, or blind. Perception requires humility, curiosity, and openness. Genius is not measured by how much you know, but by how deeply you understand what you know. Knowledge fills memory. Perception expands consciousness. A perceptive mind realizes that most of life's problems are psychological, not practical. People do not fail because they lack tools, but because they lack clarity, focus, discipline, or emotional control. Genius solves internal obstacles first. When perception strengthens the mind, external challenges become strategic instead of overwhelming. In the end, perception is the skill that turns ordinary information into extraordinary understanding. Anyone can learn facts, but few can interpret them with depth. The world is full of people with knowledge who cannot change their life because they lack perception. Genius is not about knowing more, it is about seeing deeper. Strengthen perception, and knowledge becomes power. Perception sharpens when you stop reacting to events and start interpreting them. Many people see an outcome and only judge whether it is good or bad. A perceptive mind asks what the outcome is teaching them. Every loss reveals a weakness. Every win reveals a strategy. Every frustration reveals a barrier in thinking. Perception grows when you transform results into lessons instead of emotions. A perceptive mind learns to recognize when knowledge becomes an excuse. Some people hide behind research, books, experts, or theories to avoid action. They convince themselves they need more information, when what they truly need is clarity. Knowledge becomes procrastination when it replaces execution. Genius understands when to stop learning and when to start applying. Strengthening perception means becoming aware of how quickly assumptions influence your thinking. The brain loves shortcuts, so it fills gaps with guesses. Those guesses become beliefs without evidence. A perceptive mind slows down assumptions and investigates them. Instead of assuming intention, it seeks proof. Instead of assuming meaning, it asks questions. Genius replaces assumption with awareness. To develop deep perception, learn to differentiate between truth and opinion wrapped as truth. People often present opinions with intensity, confidence, or emotion, making them seem factual. A perceptive mind does not get convinced by volume or passion. It asks, what supports this? What contradicts this? What is missing? Genius does not confuse emotional conviction with accuracy. Strengthen perception by observing how environment affects perspective. A stressed mind sees danger everywhere. A calm mind sees possibilities. A lonely person sees abandonment where none exists. A proud person sees disrespect where none was intended. Genius questions whether feelings distort perception. They ask, is this how things are, or is this how I feel right now, altering how I see it? Perception grows by understanding that clarity often requires detachment. You cannot read a book with your face pressed against the page. You must step back. The same is true with problems. Distance reveals structure. When you detach from fear, ego, and urgency, the solution becomes clearer. Genius learns to step outside the moment to see the full picture. A perceptive mind understands that intelligence without awareness leads to arrogance. Many smart people cannot evolve because they cling to knowledge as identity. They want to be the teacher even when they should be the student. Genius minds switch roles effortlessly. They do not need to be right. They need to grow. Perception exposes arrogance and replaces it with openness. To sharpen perception, train yourself to notice subtle shifts in energy. A conversation can change tone even if the words stay polite. A partnership can begin to crumble even if someone keeps smiling. A person's confidence can collapse even while they pretend to be strong. Genius pays attention to tone, timing, hesitation, silence, and micro-reactions. The truth speaks in tiny signals. Strengthening perception requires understanding that people reveal intentions through persistence and consistency more than promises. Anyone can say they care, work hard, change, or support you, but only consistent behavior validates intent. Genius waits long enough to see what remains after words fade. Perception trusts patterns, not declarations. A perceptive mind sees how belief influences perception. If you already believe something will go wrong, you will find reasons to confirm it. If you believe someone dislikes you, you will interpret neutral actions as hostility. Genius challenges beliefs before trusting perception. They ask, am I seeing reality or seeing through a belief? Perception purifies itself through skepticism. Strengthen perception by studying reaction time. Quick emotional reactions reveal insecurity, attachment, ego, or fear. Slow reactions reveal thoughtfulness. You learn more about a person by how they respond to pressure than how they behave in calm. A perceptive mind watches who stays balanced, who panics, who blames, and who adapts. Genius evaluates character through stress. A perceptive thinker recognizes that every person is shaped by a story they haven't shared. Their trauma, goals, insecurities, upbringing, disappointments, and hopes influence their choices. Genius minds don't judge behavior too quickly. They consider context. Perception sees humanity before ego. It understands that everyone acts from internal scripts they may not even understand themselves. Strengthening perception means noticing when something is missing, not just what is present. If someone tells you a story but avoids one detail, that missing detail matters. If a decision includes benefits but ignores risks, absence matters. If a strategy highlights goals but omits resources, the omission matters. Genius sees value in what isn't shown or said. Perception examines what should be there but isn't. To develop perception, study how repetition forms identity. The choices people defend repeatedly reveal their priorities. The excuses they repeat reveal their fears. The complaints they repeat reveal their insecurity. The habits they repeat reveal who they are becoming. Genius doesn't ask who someone is. They study who someone is becoming through repetition. A perceptive mind recognizes emotional ownership. If a person takes responsibility for their life, they grow. If they blame others, they shrink. Likewise, if you take ownership of your thoughts, you change them. If you blame life, you surrender control. Genius perception sees responsibility not as fault, but as power. Owning your inner world is how you influence your outer world. Strengthen perception by observing how people handle temptation. Temptation reveals discipline. How someone manages distraction reveals focus. How someone behaves privately reveals values. How someone spends spare time reveals priorities. Genius examines how people act when no one is watching. Perception sees character where performance does not exist. A perceptive mind does not confuse attention with respect. Many people admire intelligence but disrespect wisdom. They value entertainment over depth, noise over insight. Genius does not seek validation in shallow recognition. They understand that few notice perception because perceptive minds see what others pretend not to see. Perception isn't for applause, it's for clarity. Strengthening perception requires seeing how logic and emotion must balance, not battle. Pure logic becomes cold and disconnected. Pure emotion becomes chaotic and irrational. Genius uses emotion to understand human nature and logic to navigate it wisely. Perception harmonizes both to make accurate choices. Wisdom lives between empathy and reason. To build perception, focus on intention rather than impression. Many people try to look successful instead of becoming effective. They seek to appear kind rather than embody kindness. They want to seem intelligent more than understand. Genius doesn't worry about impression. They refine intention. Perception prioritizes authenticity over image. A perceptive mind trains itself to notice resistance. Resistance often reveals what matters most. If you fear learning something, it is probably the knowledge you need. If you avoid a conversation, it likely holds truth. If you procrastinate a task, it is probably your most important step. Genius interprets resistance as direction, not avoidance. Perception reveals purpose through discomfort. Strengthen perception by studying your biases in relationships. You may forgive someone because you're attached, not because they deserve it. You may admire someone because they reflect your insecurities, not because they are strong. You may judge someone harshly because they mirror a part of you you refuse to accept. Genius perception observes self-projection and corrects it. A perceptive person distinguishes between influence and manipulation. Influence inspires growth. Manipulation uses fear or guilt to control. Influence expands your self-awareness. Manipulation shrinks your identity. Genius perception asks, does this make me stronger or dependent? Clarity protects autonomy. To deepen perception, observe how fear disguises itself as logic. People claim they are just being careful, but they are avoiding risk. They say they are waiting for the right time, but they are postponing change. They say they want more certainty, but they fear failure. Genius sees past excuses into the insecurity beneath them. Perception unmasks fear dressed as reasoning. Strengthen perception by recognizing patterns of self-sabotage. Some delay opportunities, argue against their own success, or cling to beliefs that undermine them. Genius perception asks, what belief is making me shrink instead of grow? Awareness breaks sabotage. Without perception, the enemy is internal and invisible. A perceptive mind sees beyond intensity. Some people express emotion dramatically to manipulate others. Some speak passionately with no substance. Some exaggerate ideas to hide ignorance. Genius looks not at volume or expression, but at reasoning. Emotion doesn't validate truth. Perception separates performance from reality. Strengthen perception by observing silence in yourself. Silence reveals your deeper beliefs. When you stop distracting yourself, your real fears appear. Your unspoken desires surface. Your real opinions show. Genius sits in silence to witness the truth beneath noise. Perception requires listening to your inner voice without interruption. A perceptive thinker understands that many people do not fear the truth. They fear how the truth will require them to change. Information is not threatening, transformation is. Genius knows that resistance to truth is resistance to growth. Perception helps you face truth without defending your old self. To strengthen perception, you must question your emotional defaults. If your automatic response is anger, ask what insecurity anger protects. If your reaction is avoidance, ask what pain avoidance hides. If your reaction is overconfidence, ask what fear it compensates for. Genius examines emotion like data, not identity. Perception treats feelings as clues, not definitions. A perceptive mind sees value in contradiction. Someone can love you and still hurt you. Something can be good for you, yet uncomfortable. A solution can be simple, but difficult. Life does not exist in one meaning. Genius perception holds multiple truths without confusion. Wisdom expands when you learn to hold complexity. Strengthen perception by recognizing how the ego filters reality. Ego wants praise more than progress. It wants safety more than challenge. It wants validation more than growth. Genius perception does not serve the ego. It questions it. It asks, is this desire helping me evolve or just making me feel comfortable? Awareness disarms ego. A perceptive person understands that clarity must precede decision. If you act before understanding, you repeat mistakes. People who rush choices often repeat their past instead of shaping their future. Genius takes time to gain perception before making the next move. Clarity reduces regret, improves precision, and saves years of correction. To build perception, focus on principles rather than preferences. Preferences are personal and emotional. Principles are universal and rooted in logic, ethics, and fundamental truth. Genius relies on principles for stability. Preferences change with mood. Principles remain steady. Perception strengthens when decisions are guided by universal reasoning, not personal volatility. Strengthening perception means noticing how people handle success as much as failure. Some remain humble, others become arrogant. Some stay disciplined, others become careless. Success reveals character more than struggle does. Genius observes how victory changes someone before trusting their stability. Perception tests character after achievement, not before. A perceptive mind studies motivation. Every action has a hidden motive: love, fear, pride, security, desire, status, belonging, or avoidance. If you understand motive, you understand decision. Genius sees what drives people, not just what they show. Perception looks beneath action into intention. Strengthen perception by recognizing the difference between being busy and being effective. Many people drown in activity without moving forward. They fill their schedules to avoid growth. Genius asks, what is the result of this effort? Perception values output, not movement. Efficiency matters more than hustle. A perceptive thinker observes how power affects behavior. Give someone influence and watch how they treat others. Power does not change a person. It reveals who they already are. Genius studies leadership through the lens of character. Perception understands that authority without integrity creates harm, not leadership. In developing perception, learn to question your interpretations. If you think someone dislikes you, ask yourself whether there is evidence or projection. If you believe a task is impossible, ask whether that belief is based on fact or fear. Genius does not accept interpretation as truth. Perception verifies mentally what emotion assumes instantly. Strengthen perception by mastering the art of observation before judgment. Most people judge first and understand later, if ever. Genius observes, analyzes, questions, and then concludes. Perception is slow in conclusion, but fast in recognition. It sees clearly because it waits before labeling. To enhance perception, notice how consistency builds credibility. Anyone can behave well once, but reliability proves intention. Genius values consistency because it reveals truth. A person's words matter far less than the patterns of their actions. Perception does not trust moments. It trusts history of behavior. A perceptive mind sees the hidden cost of every choice. Every yes takes time, energy, commitment, focus, and sacrifice. Genius asks, what am I losing by choosing this? People who do not see cost gamble their lives emotionally and financially without awareness. Perception protects decisions from hidden consequences. In the end, strengthening perception transforms how you think, choose, relate, and grow. Anyone can memorize facts, but few can interpret reality. Knowledge gives information, perception gives direction. When you train your mind to see truth beneath surface, you stop being fooled by noise, ego, impulse, expectation, or illusion. You don't just know more, you understand more. And understanding is genius. Chapter 8. Become a creator of insight, not a consumer of information. Most people believe intelligence is measured by how much they consume: books, podcasts, courses, videos, quotes, opinions. They collect information like trophies, but never turn it into understanding. Information becomes noise when it is not transformed into insight. The world is full of people who know a lot, but understand very little. Genius is not in knowing more. It is in seeing deeper, interpreting better, and creating clarity from complexity. To become a creator of insight, you must stop memorizing and start processing. Information should not sit in your mind as storage. It should be filtered, questioned, dissected, and reorganized into something meaningful. If you cannot explain something in your own words, you haven't understood it. Insight is what remains after information is digested. The consumer collects knowledge, the creator converts it. The difference between information and insight is transformation. Information is a tool, insight is what you build with it. Two people can read the same page. One memorizes facts, the other extracts a life lesson. One collects quotes, the other internalizes principles. The consumer worships external knowledge. The The creator uses knowledge as raw material to sharpen internal perception. To create insight, you must ask questions no one else asks. Not, what does this mean, but how does this apply to life? What truth does this reveal? How does this change behavior? Insight is the intersection between knowledge and application. It is knowledge that alters thinking, shapes action, and transforms identity. Insight is information with impact. A creator of insight does not chase volume of information. They chase depth. One idea explored deeply can change a lifetime more than 1,000 facts skimmed quickly. People who consume excessively rarely grow. Their minds become full, but not wise. Genius minds do not chase more. They dig into what they already know until it becomes wisdom. Insight grows when you connect ideas across subjects. Instead of thinking in isolated categories, you think in networks. You see how philosophy influences business, how psychology affects relationships, how history predicts economics, how biology mirrors human behavior. The consumer sees separation. The creator sees threads. Insight is born from connection. To create insight, stop seeking information that flatters your beliefs. Seek information that challenges them. Most people chase agreement. Genius welcomes contradiction. They study opposing ideas not to fight them, but to refine their understanding. The consumer protects identity. The creator expands it. Growth begins where defensiveness ends. Insight requires friction. When a new idea clashes with an old belief, you must choose whether to defend your comfort or evolve your mind. Many choose comfort. They ignore what threatens their self-image. The creator embraces discomfort as an invitation to transcend old thinking. Insight is the reward earned after ego surrenders. A creator of insight learns to slow down thinking. Consumers rush from idea to idea like tourists taking pictures. They collect but never inhabit anything. Insight requires dwelling, staying with a question long enough to explore it fully. Depth comes from stillness, contemplation, and patience. Genius thinks slowly but deeply. To create insight, treat knowledge as clay, not stone. It is meant to be molded, shaped, questioned, and transformed into something more refined than its original form. Knowledge is a starting point, not a conclusion. The consumer clings to knowledge. The creator works with it. Insight is knowledge that has been sculpted. You must learn to generate meaning from observation. Insight does not only come from books, it comes from watching people, relationships, patterns, decisions, habits, and consequences. The consumer waits for a teacher. The creator learns from existence. Life becomes the textbook. Experience becomes the lecture. Insight comes from questioning how and why, not just what. Knowledge tells you the rule. Insight reveals the reasoning. Knowledge shows the outcome. Insight reveals the process. Knowledge informs the mind. Insight directs the mind. Genius is not the one who knows the answer, but the one who knows how to find the answer, shape the answer, and improve the answer. The creator of insight interprets knowledge through their own lens instead of borrowing others' opinions. They do not repeat what experts say without internal evaluation. They use experts as reference points, not authorities over their thoughts. Insight requires ownership of knowledge. If you cannot think independently, you cannot think intelligently. You must learn to extract universal principles from specific experiences. Instead of seeing events as isolated incidents, ask, what pattern does this represent? What lesson is repeatable? What truth applies beyond this moment? Insight is the ability to turn the personal into the universal. Wisdom expands when you generalize learning effectively. To create insight, you must stop chasing trends. Trends distract you from the deeper truths that endure. Insight is timeless. It remains true across conditions. Consumers chase the new. Creators refine the lasting. Genius builds frameworks that outlive novelty. Trends fade. Principles remain. Insight grows from principles. Insight requires the courage to be wrong. If you fear being wrong, you will never explore deeply enough to discover something original. The consumer wants accuracy. The creator wants discovery. Accuracy matters, but discovery creates progress. Insight grows when you explore possibilities rather than defend certainty. To become a creator of insight, stop collecting knowledge like a hoarder. Ask yourself, after learning something, how does this change how I think, decide, or act? If learning does not transform perspective or behavior, it becomes useless. Information is consumed, insight is integrated, genius integrates. Insight emerges when you look for mechanisms, not headlines. When you hear a success story, don't focus on the achievement. Focus on the process, habits, psychology, patterns, sacrifices. When you hear failure, don't focus on loss. Focus on the cause. Headlines give information, mechanisms give insight. To create insight, reflect after learning. Reflection turns knowledge into understanding. Ask, what did I miss? What bias influenced this? What alternative explanation exists? How would this idea fail? Under what condition does it succeed? Insight is born from interrogation, not absorption. Genius interrogates knowledge until it reveals its truth. A creator of insight does not mimic style. They extract the essence. If they learn from a philosopher, they don't imitate the writing, they extract the principle. If they learn from a business leader, they don't copy the tactics, they extract the strategy. Imitation is memory, essence is mastery. Insight focuses on essence. To create insight, draw conclusions from contradiction instead of ignoring it. When two opposing ideas both contain truth, wisdom lies in synthesis. Genius minds do not choose sides prematurely. They extract truth from both, combine them, elevate them, and create a higher perspective. Insight is synthesis. Insight requires seeing through language. Words hide complexity, exaggerate meaning, simplify arguments, emotionalize ideas. A creator listens beyond phrasing to the structure of reasoning. They do not get lost in vocabulary, they look for logic. Language contains content, perception extracts meaning. To create insight, you must commit to depth even when depth is lonely. Most people prefer digestible content over challenging ideas. They prefer entertainment over education. The creator walks a path fewer people choose, the path of contemplation. Insight is a reward for those who choose depth over dopamine. Insight grows when you explore edges, ideas that exist at the boundary of comfort, morality, logic, and culture. The world progresses through those who question what others accept. Those who challenge norms, not disrespectfully, but curiously, strategically, and with reason, become creators of new paradigms. Insight pushes boundaries. To create insight, you must differentiate between what is true generally and what is true personally. A concept may be valuable for society, but not for your path. Another idea may be irrelevant to society, but essential to your identity. Insight personalizes knowledge. It tailors truth to purpose. Insight requires emotional maturity. If you seek only information that makes you feel good, you will remain mentally weak. Insight is built through the confrontation of uncomfortable truth, not emotional comfort. Genius does not protect ego, they refine ego. Perception expands when ego shrinks. A creator of insight studies failure without shame. They analyze mistakes with curiosity rather than judgment. They search cause instead of blaming identity. They see failure as data, not identity. Insight turns failure from fear into teacher. The consumer wants to forget failure. The creator wants to examine it. Insight is strengthened through silence. Constant stimulation kills reflection. If your mind is always filled with sound, news, music, conversation, entertainment, you cannot generate original thought. Silence is the birthplace of insight. Genius spends time thinking alone, not merely consuming externally. To create insight, become a student of human nature. Understand why people seek approval, why they lie to themselves, why they avoid growth, why they sabotage success, why they conform, why they attach to illusions. Insight comes from studying internal motives, not external outcomes. The mind becomes wise when it understands the mind. Insight requires building frameworks, not opinions. A framework is a structure of thought you can apply repeatedly to different situations. Opinions are temporary reactions. Frameworks are tools. Genius builds tools. The consumer expresses opinions. The creator constructs models of understanding. To create insight, you must master the ability to summarize complexity. If you can explain a complex idea simply, you understand it deeply. If you cannot, you do not. Genius translation is transformation, compressing complexity into clarity. Insight simplifies without distortion. Insight grows when you observe how beliefs shape perception. People do not see reality, they see their interpretation of it. If you can understand how beliefs filter truth, you can reposition your beliefs, and in doing so, reposition your understanding of the world. Insight begins with belief awareness. To become a creator, challenge the source of your certainty. Ask yourself why you believe what you believe. Where did those ideas come from? Who benefits from you believing them? When you examine your own certainty, you begin to think independently. Insight demands independence from borrowed beliefs. Insight requires curiosity without agenda. If you explore ideas only to confirm what you already believe, you learn nothing. Curiosity should not be biased toward comfort or validation. It must be open to discovering you were wrong. Genius curiosity seeks truth, not justification. To create insight, integrate knowledge with experience. Theory without action becomes speculation. Experience without theory becomes repetition. Insight is built when you combine them. When you test what you learn and learn from what you test, knowledge evolves into understanding. Perception evolves into wisdom. Insight matures when you understand that learning has a purpose beyond accumulation. Learning is meant to improve thinking, not decorate it. It is meant to refine decision, not impress others. It is meant to create change, not identity. Genius does not learn to look smart, they learn to live smart. A creator of insight is not addicted to answers, they are obsessed with pursuit. They understand that wisdom is not a destination, but a continuous evolution. The consumer seeks closure, the creator seeks expansion. Insight keeps growing because the mind remains curious. The pursuit becomes a way of life. In the end, becoming a creator of insight requires one shift. Stop asking, "What can I learn next?" and start asking, "What can I understand deeper, apply stronger, and transform into wisdom?" Insight is not a collection, it is a conversion. The person who converts knowledge into clarity, direction, and life elevation becomes the true genius. Consumption feeds the mind. Insight transforms it. Insight expands when you learn to reinterpret old knowledge in new ways. Instead of simply storing ideas, you revisit them after life teaches you more. Something you read years ago can reveal a deeper truth when your perception matures. Knowledge doesn't grow by reading more, it grows by thinking more about what you've already read. Re-examining knowledge is how you extract its layers. Genius returns to the same concept repeatedly, each time extracting a richer meaning that wasn't visible before. To create insight, you must allow knowledge to challenge your identity instead of decorating it. Most people use what they learn to reinforce who they already think they are. They search for quotes that justify their weaknesses, ideas that flatter their worldview, teachings that protect their habits. Insight does the opposite. It questions identity. It breaks illusions you cling to. It asks whether your beliefs are serving you or limiting you. Wisdom grows when identity is flexible, not fixed. Insight is created through contrast. When you observe two ideas that seem unrelated, look for bridges between them. Bridges are where wisdom lives. For example, the patience required in nature reflects the patience needed for success. The fragility of glass resembles the fragility of trust. By comparing different ideas, you form metaphors that reveal truth. Genius thinkers extract meaning using comparison, turning random information into universal understanding. To create insight, practice distillation. Distillation is the ability to compress a complicated concept into a simple truth without losing its essence. It is not simplification, it is precision. You extract what matters most. A wise mind removes excess until only principle remains. Distillation produces clarity others can use. If your thinking adds complexity, it is knowledge. If it reduces complexity without distortion, it is insight. Insight deepens when you notice what others ignore. Most people listen to conclusions but overlook the process behind them. They hear success stories but ignore sacrifices. They hear advice but ignore struggles. They see results but ignore failures. Insight focuses on the invisible influences, not the visible outcomes. The invisible shapes reality more than the visible ever could. Look for what isn't said. Look beyond the headline. A creator of insight learns to observe behavior more than words. People often say what they wish to believe, but act according to what they truly believe. Words are ideals. Behavior is truth. Genius pays attention to actions rather than claims. Wisdom is found in how people move, not in what they announce. Understanding human contradiction gives insight into motivation, fear, and authenticity. Insight grows when you understand that truth is rarely absolute. It changes depending on context, personality, culture, timing, and intention. What is helpful in one situation may be harmful in another. A wise mind does not treat ideas like commandments but like tools. Tools are applied when they fit the situation. Genius thinking is adaptable, not rigid. Insight requires perspective, not dogma. To become a creator of insight, you must learn to observe without immediately interpreting. Interpretation, too, quickly creates misunderstanding. Insight requires seeing clearly before deciding what something means. You do not judge, define, or conclude too soon. You observe patiently, then interpret slowly, then refine deeply. Rushed perception is the enemy of wisdom. A calm mind sees more accurately than a busy one. Insight strengthens when you connect knowledge to emotion. Knowledge alone is analytical. Emotion alone is impulsive. Insight is the union of intellect and feeling. It recognizes the logic of experience and the emotion of truth. Genius thinking understands how ideas influence behavior, how beliefs influence identity, and how thoughts influence emotion. Insight interprets the emotional consequences of logic. Insight requires humility toward your ignorance. You must recognize that the more you learn, the more you realize how little you've understood. A wise mind doesn't chase certainty. It chases clarity, knowing clarity keeps evolving. Those who claim to know everything stop growing. Insight grows in minds that remain curious, teachable, and willing to be wrong. Wisdom begins where arrogance ends. To create insight, stop assuming you already understand something just because it feels familiar. Familiarity tricks the brain into thinking it knows, even when it doesn't. Genius thinkers ignore familiarity and treat every idea as if they're seeing it for the first time. This beginner's mind removes the illusion of knowledge and creates space for deeper understanding. Insight requires innocence, not expertise. Insight is born when you question the mental frameworks you inherited. You didn't create your first beliefs. They were given to you by family, society, culture, school, and environment. To think like a genius, you must examine the source of your worldview. Ask, who taught me this? Why did they believe it? Does this belief serve me or imprison me? Wisdom begins when you stop inheriting thoughts and start designing them. To become a creator of insight, learn to articulate what others feel but cannot express. People often struggle to translate their experiences into words. When you can capture emotion with clarity, you become a mirror of truth for others. Insight becomes valuable when it gives language to feelings, structure to confusion, and meaning to struggle. Wisdom is when your understanding speaks to another person's inner world. Insight requires seeing consequences beyond the moment. Most thinking is short-term. It sees what feels good now. Insight sees how actions today shape identity tomorrow. It sees hidden costs of immediate pleasure and hidden rewards of delayed effort. Wisdom thinks in long arcs. It predicts who you are becoming based on what you consistently choose, not what you occasionally desire. To create insight, practice reframing. Reframing is shifting perspective so that problems become lessons, limitations become direction, and discomfort becomes growth. Reframing doesn't deny difficulty. It transforms its meaning. A genius does not suffer without learning. They do not fail without extracting knowledge. They do not experience pain without uncovering purpose. Insight turns obstacles into teachers. Insight strengthens when you use observation to understand intention, not just action. Actions can be similar while motives differ. One person works hard out of passion, another out of insecurity. Insight doesn't just ask what, it asks why. The depth of truth lies in motive. Genius understands that intention shapes destiny more than action alone. To become a creator of insight, embrace slow thinking in fast environments. The world rewards speed, but speed kills wisdom. Genius operates on a different rhythm, noticing details others skip, reflecting when others react, questioning when others follow. Insight is not produced by urgency, but by depth. A slow thinker in a fast world becomes a master of understanding. Insight is impossible without silence. Silence gives space for thoughts to expand, connect, settle, and reveal their structure. Constant noise blocks revelation. True genius spends time thinking alone, not scrolling, not consuming, not distracting, thinking. Insight is discovered, not delivered. It appears in stillness like a whisper you finally have time to hear. A creator of insight recognizes patterns where others see randomness. Life is full of repeated behaviors, predictable reactions, cyclical relationships, and recurring mistakes. Insight sees structure in chaos. It predicts outcomes based on repeated tendencies. The consumer sees events as isolated. The creator sees them as connected patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior. Insight grows when you differentiate between information that informs you and information that transforms you. The former expands your mind, the latter evolves your identity. Transformation matters more than knowledge. You could read thousands of books and remain unchanged if nothing alters how you think or behave. Insight transforms perspective into personal evolution. To become a creator, notice how people lie to themselves. Most self-deception is unconscious. People choose beliefs that protect their comfort, ego, or fear. They think they are being logical when they are being emotional. Insight sees these hidden motives and understands why people cling to illusions. Wisdom doesn't judge. It recognizes the psychology behind belief. Insight deepens when you realize that meaning is created, not discovered. Events themselves are neutral. Interpretation is what gives them value or pain, lesson or trauma. A genius does not wait for life to give meaning. They craft meaning. They decide what an experience will represent. Insight is the power to assign constructive interpretation to reality. To create insight, learn to hold questions without needing immediate answers. The mind grows as it wrestles with uncertainty. Some thoughts need time to evolve before truth becomes clear. Insight matures like fruit, not instantly, but through growth. The consumer wants quick answers. The creator allows ideas to ripen. Insight becomes powerful when you learn to deconstruct complexity. Instead of getting overwhelmed by large issues, you break them into smaller mechanisms. You identify each part, understand its function, and reconstruct it with clarity. This analytical ability creates mastery. You conquer complexity by dividing it. Genius solves problems by simplifying them through structure. Insight expands when you observe how beliefs shape behavior unconsciously. People act according to what they believe about themselves, not what they know intellectually. Knowledge without identity alignment becomes useless. Wisdom teaches you to update identity first so that knowledge becomes actionable. Insight directs transformation from the inside outward. To create insight, you must see knowledge as dynamic, evolving with context rather than fixed in time. What was true once may no longer apply in new circumstances. A wise mind updates beliefs when evidence changes. Stagnation is ignorance disguised as certainty. Insight is flexible, responsive, and in constant refinement. Insight requires applying what you learn through experimentation. Theories must be tested in life to become wisdom. A creator does not just read about discipline, they practice it. They don't just study communication, they observe their conversations. They don't just understand psychology, they analyze their reactions. Knowledge becomes insight through application. To become a creator, stop seeking validation for your understanding. Insight does not need applause. It does not need agreement. It is measured by its accuracy, not popularity. Genius thinkers often see truth before society is ready to accept it. Insight requires the confidence to trust your mind even when others cannot yet comprehend it. Insight strengthens through subtraction, not addition. Simplicity is the end result of mastery. Anyone can make something complicated. Only a wise thinker can make something profound sound simple without emptying its truth. Insight removes noise until essence remains. Simplicity is the signature of genius. To create insight, challenge the assumptions beneath every opinion. Most arguments are built on unexamined beliefs. If you inspect the foundation, the argument often collapses. Genius doesn't debate opinions. They expose the root assumptions that make those opinions possible. Insight is the art of digging beneath claims to uncover unquestioned beliefs. Insight grows when you learn to see systems rather than events. An event is a moment. A system is a pattern that produces moments repeatedly. Events distract. Systems reveal truth. Wisdom comes from studying the machinery behind outcomes. A genius thinker doesn't react to events. They redesign the systems that produce them. To become a creator of insight, see learning as reconstruction. You are not adding ideas to your brain. You are reorganizing your mind. You restructure your thinking, update your worldview, refine your logic, reorganize your perception. Learning is not the accumulation of ideas. It is the renovation of thought. Insight requires recognizing the limits of your perspective. No matter how deep you think, there are always angles you haven't considered. This awareness protects you from arrogance and keeps curiosity alive. A wise thinker knows they are always incomplete. Insight grows when humility opens space for expansion. To create insight, learn from silence, contradiction, mistakes, experience, relationships, psychology, nature, art, science, and history. The world becomes your teacher. Every discipline reflects truth. Every human reveals wisdom. Insight is not learned in school, it is extracted from life. Genius is not information, it is perception. In the end, to become a creator of insight, you must shift your focus from consumption to transformation, from knowing to understanding, from collecting to interpreting, from learning to evolving. Insight is what remains after knowledge has shaped your identity, influenced your decisions, and upgraded your perception. The consumer gathers information, the creator becomes wisdom. In the end, genius isn't what you are born with. It's what you build. It's the version of your mind that emerges after you stop thinking the way the world taught you to think and start thinking for yourself. True intelligence isn't loud. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't rush. It observes, questions, connects, and understands. It creates clarity where others see confusion and possibilities where others see limitation. You become smarter not by knowing more, but by seeing deeper. You gain insight not by collecting information, but by training your brain to organize it, challenge it, and transform it into wisdom. This is how a genius thinks, not with chaos, but with precision, not with ego, but with discipline, not with fear of being wrong, but with curiosity about what could be right. If you want your mind to grow, you must stop using it only for distraction and start using it for mastery. Challenge your thoughts, stretch your focus, question your beliefs, and commit to deeper thinking every day. Your brain becomes brilliant through consistency, not luck. Through effort, not excuses. Because the day you control your mind is the day you stop copying the world and start creating your own. And that is the moment you unlock your inner genius.